Zara had known nothing but servitude, a personal slave stripped of her rank and purpose. That was before Commander Anthony Young saw her potential, and against all logic, made the slave his general. The clang of a metal boot scraper echoed in the narrow corridor, each scrape a fresh abrasion on Zara's already raw nerves. Kneeling, she scrubbed at the mud caked onto the officer's boots, the rough bristles of the brush grating against the dull scales of her hand. The once vibrant jade of her scales was now muted, scarred with the brands of her captors, each mark a silent scream of humiliation. "Enjoying your new position, Zara?" The officer's voice dripped with cruel amusement. "Lieutenant Krell." Zara kept her head bowed, focusing on the task. Such a fall from grace, from supreme strategos of the Saurian Fifth Fleet to boot cleaner. A pity, wouldn't you say? He pressed harder, grinding his heel into the brush. Zara's three-fingered hand tightened on the handle, the pressure a futile attempt to contain the burning resentment that clawed at her throat. A new presence filled the cramped space. Commander Anthony Young. He stood silently, observing Zara with an intense, assessing gaze. His eyes, the color of weathered steel, missed nothing the rigid set of her shoulders, the almost imperceptible flinch as Krell pressed down harder, the flicker of defiance in her reptilian eyes. "That's enough, Lieutenant." Anthony's voice was low but carried the unmistakable weight of command. Krell straightened, a flicker of annoyance crossing his features. "Commander, I was merely—" "You were making a point, Lieutenant. I believe it's been made." Anthony's gaze remained fixed on Zara. "Release her." Krell sputtered. "Sir, she's assigned to latrine and maintenance duty. We're short-staffed as it is." "I'm countermanding the order, Lieutenant." Anthony's words were absolute. He stepped closer to Zara, his shadow falling over her. "You are no longer a slave." He offered a hand not to pull her up, but as a gesture of respect. Zara hesitated, her gaze darting between Anthony's outstretched hand and Krell's furious face. Slowly, cautiously, she took it. His grip was firm, calloused, and surprisingly warm. Whispers rippled through the outpost as Anthony escorted Zara away from the latrines. Human and Saurian soldiers alike stopped to stare, their faces a mixture of shock, confusion, and outright disapproval. A human commander freeing a Saurian slave, and a former officer no less. Madness. Inside his office, the air was thick with the scent of ozone and stale coffee. Anthony gestured for Zara to sit, but she remained standing, her posture rigid. "I intend to reinstate you into military service, Zara." Her scales seemed to shimmer with disbelief. "Reinstate me into human military service." The words tasted like ash in her mouth. "I've reviewed your military record from before your capture," Anthony continued, ignoring her incredulity. "Your strategic acumen is undeniable. Your understanding of Saurian tactics combined with your adaptability, those skills are too valuable to waste cleaning boots." "Why?" Zara finally asked, her voice a low hiss. "Why would a human commander trust a former Saurian officer? Let alone a slave?" Anthony leaned back in his chair, his gaze unwavering. "I'm not blind to the prejudice you'll face, but I believe your capabilities outweigh your past. Besides," a hint of a smile played on his lips, "I've never been one for following convention." He paused, letting the silence hang in the air. "I'm offering you the position of General, Zara." The offer struck her like a physical blow. General. After everything she had lost, everything she had endured, could she even trust this human? The internal conflict raged within her, a storm of doubt and cautious hope. The door slammed open, interrupting the tense silence. Lieutenant Miller stood there, his face flushed with anger. "Commander, with all due respect, this is insane. Releasing her is one thing, but making her a general. Have you lost your mind? She's a Saurian. Her allegiances will always lie with her own kind. This is a security risk of the highest order." Anthony rose to his feet, his expression hardening. "That's enough, Miller. I appreciate your concern, but this is my decision. General Zara will be an asset to this command. I suggest you treat her with the respect her rank deserves." He dismissed Miller with a curt nod, but the seeds of doubt had been sown. Zara remembered a specific incident, a conspiracy she had uncovered during her time as a strategist. Powerful figures manipulating troop deployments for their own gain. Had that discovery led to her capture? Had she been set up? "I will accept your offer, Commander," Zara said, her voice firm despite the turmoil within. "But I have one condition. I want access to all intelligence reports, all strategic data. I need to independently assess the situation. I need to understand why I am here." Anthony met her gaze, his expression unreadable. "Agreed, General. You'll have full access. I trust your judgment." He extended his hand again, and this time, Zara grasped it without hesitation. The unconventional partnership was forged, setting the stage for a battle on two fronts: the external war against their enemies and the internal war against prejudice and doubt, a battle that would test the limits of their trust and their very survival. Zara stood before the reinforced door of the military's central data hub, her scaled fingers hovering over the access panel. The red light pulsed, a silent denial. "Authorization required," a synthesized voice echoed from the wall. Her request for access to the secure network had been met with immediate resistance, standard procedure for someone of her history. A low hum announced Anthony's arrival. "Commander Young," the door chimed, the red light turning a compliant green. The heavy door hissed open. He offered a curt nod to the Marine Guard stationed inside. "At ease, Sergeant. General Zara has full clearance." LT Miller stood near a bank of flickering monitors, his eyes sharp. He didn't acknowledge Zara directly, instead addressing Anthony. "Commander, with all due respect, I still question the wisdom of granting a former enemy access to our most sensitive intelligence." His voice carried just enough to be heard by the other officers in the room, creating a palpable chill. "It sets a dangerous precedent." Anthony's gaze hardened. General Zara's strategic acumen has already proven invaluable. Her clearance is authorized. "Dismissed, Lieutenant." He gestured Zara toward a vacant terminal. "Don't let him bother you, he's just cautious." Zara settled into the ergonomic chair, the cool metal a stark contrast to her reptilian skin. She spent hours immersed in the data streams, the complex algorithms and encrypted reports blurring into a chaotic mess. But beneath the surface chaos, patterns began to emerge. Inconsistencies in patrol routes, missing inventory logs, discrepancies in supply shipment manifests. It was subtle, almost imperceptible, but it was there. A pattern of coordinated attacks, seemingly random but strategically targeted to weaken human assets. Later that evening, she stood before Anthony in his office, the holographic display illuminating the violet scales of her face. "Commander, I've analyzed the data. There's a high probability of internal sabotage." She gestured to the display, highlighting the anomalies. "The attacks appear random, but they consistently target key infrastructure, communication relays, energy conduits, medical supply depots. Someone is deliberately undermining our operations." Anthony leaned forward, his expression grim. "How certain are you?" 78% probability, Zara stated, her voice firm. "The inconsistencies are too frequent, too well placed to be coincidental. I believe we're dealing with a coordinated effort." Anthony nodded slowly. "I'll order an immediate internal investigation. But be warned, Zara, this could be dangerous for you. You've made powerful enemies already." He activated a secure comm channel. Security detail to General Zara's quarters, effective immediately. Zara considered her next words carefully. "Commander, with your permission, I'd like to propose a counterintelligence operation. I believe I can anticipate the enemy's next move." Anthony raised an eyebrow. "Based on what?" "My knowledge of Saurian tactics," Zara replied. "They are predictable, reliant on established doctrine. I know how they think. I can use that to our advantage. We can set a trap." Anthony studied her intently. "A trap? I like it. All right, Zara, you have my authorization. Assemble your team, but choose wisely. Trust is paramount." Zara moved with purpose, navigating the corridors of the outpost with a newfound confidence. She sought out individuals known for their skills and loyalty, but also those who had initially expressed skepticism about her appointment. Sergeant Miller, despite his reservations, was a brilliant tactician. Specialist Phillips, a logistics expert with an impeccable record. Even Private Jacks, a young Saurian recruit who had openly questioned her allegiance. She needed their skills, their perspectives, and she needed to prove to them and to herself that she was worthy of their trust. The training began in earnest. Zara pushed her team to their limits, drilling them in unconventional combat techniques, psychological warfare, and the art of deception. She drew upon both human and Saurian martial traditions, blending them into a unique and unpredictable fighting style. During one simulated ambush, Zara identified a critical flaw in the human military's standard operating procedure, a reliance on predictable response patterns. She exploited this weakness, leading her team to a swift and decisive victory. The recruits, initially skeptical, were visibly MLT, said. LT. Miller, however, remained unconvinced. "General," he said, his voice filled with thinly veiled disdain, "while your unorthodox methods may yield short-term results, they deviate significantly from established protocol. Such deviations can lead to chaos on the battlefield." Zara turned to face him, her scaled face impassive. "Lieutenant, established protocol is precisely what our enemy expects. We must be unpredictable, adaptable. Our shared goal is the security of this outpost. Are you questioning my commitment to that goal, Lieutenant?" Miller's heart made. "No, General, but I am questioning your methods." "Then prove me wrong, Lieutenant," Zara challenged, her voice sharp. "Show me a better way." Anthony, observing from the sidelines, felt a surge of respect for Zara. She was learning to navigate the complex social dynamics of the human military, balancing diplomacy with decisive action. The counter-intelligence operation launched under the cloak of darkness. Zara led her team on a covert mission to intercept a suspected supply shipment, acting on a hunch based on the pattern she had identified. They moved silently through the shadows, their movements fluid and precise. The team successfully intercepted the shipment, uncovering crates filled with advanced weaponry and communication devices, evidence of a conspiracy involving high-ranking Saurian officials colluding with unknown human elements. As Zara examined the contents, she discovered a coded message hidden within a seemingly innocuous component. "Commander," she said, her voice low, "I believe this reveals the location of a secret meeting between the conspirators." Anthony arrived quickly, his face grim as he looked over the recovered evidence. "It could be a trap," he said, his eyes scanning the surroundings. "They know we're onto them." "It's a risk we have to take," Zara replied, her voice resolute. "This meeting could expose the entire conspiracy." Zara paused, her violet eyes filled with a flicker of conflict. "Commander, this meeting. It's on Saurian territory. I may have to deceive my own kind. I don't know if I can." Anthony placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle. "Zara, your loyalty is not to a species, but to what is right. What you do will not be a betrayal, but an act of justice. I trust you." Zara met his gaze, her expression softening. "Thank you, Commander," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "I won't let you down." Anthony steepled his fingers, the holographic map of the neutral world shimmering between them. "So they think they're being clever, using a civilian transport. Makes sense. Less heat." He glanced at Zara. "Equipment manifest looks clean. Personnel. Miller still giving you trouble." Zara's scales shifted subtly, a sign of suppressed irritation. "He questions my impartiality, says my Saurian blood will cloud my judgment." "He's wrong," Anthony stated flatly. "He's good at logistics, bad at seeing the bigger picture. We need you, Zara. Your insights are invaluable." "Now let's finalize this gear manifest. We'll keep the comms tight band, encrypted with your Saurian cipher. They won't suspect a thing." Zara nodded, her gaze returning to the dossiers of potential attendees displayed on the screen. General Varkos will be there. He's ambitious, ruthless, and Counselor Ryla. She's always been a snake, even before she lost her tail plating in the riots. She paused, a flicker of doubt crossing her features. There are others I should be able to trust, old war comrades, but I don't know anymore. A low hum filled the civilian transport as it slipped through the void. The ship was deliberately unremarkable, its hull scarred with simulated micrometeorite impacts. Inside, Anthony found Miller pacing the narrow corridor. "Commander," Miller began, his voice tight, "I still have reservations about this operation, putting Zara in charge. It's a risk. She's Saurian. We don't know where her loyalties truly lie." Anthony stopped him with a raised hand. "Lieutenant, Zara has proven her loyalty time and again. She anticipated the ambush on Tarokis. She saved your squad, Miller. Are you forgetting that?" "That doesn't change what she is, Commander. What if she's playing us?" Anthony's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "That's enough, Miller. Zara is one of the finest strategists I've ever met, human or Saurian. I trust her judgment implicitly, and I expect you to do the same. Understood?" Miller swallowed, his face flushed. "Understood, Commander." Later, in their cramped quarters, Zara stared out at the swirling nebulae beyond the viewport. "He doesn't trust me, Anthony. Miller, and perhaps he's right." Anthony placed a hand on her shoulder, his touch surprisingly gentle against her scaled hide. "He's wrong, Zara. He sees your species, not you. I see a brilliant strategist, a loyal officer, and a friend. Don't let his prejudice cloud your judgment." Zara turned, her silver eyes meeting his. "But I will be deceiving my own people, lying to them, spying on them." Anthony's gaze was unwavering. "You're not betraying your people, Zara. You're betraying those who would corrupt them, those who would drag the galaxy back into war. You're fighting for justice, for peace. Remember what's at stake." The transport docked at a bustling spaceport on the neutral world. Zara, disguised as a mid-level Saurian merchant in flowing robes and a concealing veil, stepped onto the crowded platform. The air was thick with the smells of exotic spices and alien pheromones. She blended seamlessly into the throng, her senses on high alert, scanning for any signs of surveillance. She made her way to a dimly lit cantina, the rendezvous point for her informant. A hooded figure waited in a secluded booth, their scales barely visible in the gloom. "The meeting," Zara hissed, her voice modulated to a rougher timbre, the coded message. Was it accurate? The informant hesitated, their reptilian eyes darting nervously. "Partially. The date and time are correct. But the location, it's been changed. It's not at the council chambers anymore." "Where is it?" Zara pressed, her grip tightening on her datapad. "A private estate, high security, owned by a wealthy arms dealer. They suspect nothing." Back on the transport, Anthony reviewed the updated intel. A private estate. That throws a wrench in things. The original plan is compromised. "They knew we were coming," Zara said grimly, her voice echoing through the comms. "They deliberately fed us false information." Anthony zoomed in on a satellite image of the estate. Heavy security, perimeter walls, laser grids, drone patrols. "This isn't just a meeting, Zara, this is a fortress." He paused, his gaze hardening. "The new location. It's owned by Vorlak. Ex-military rumored to be involved in the slave trade." Zara's scales rippled. "Vorlak, I know him, he was influential." Zara approached the estate, her merchant disguise holding firm. She presented forged credentials at the main gate, her heart pounding in her chest. The guards, clad in heavy armor, scanned her thoroughly but found nothing amiss. She was waved through. Inside, the estate was opulent, a stark contrast to the squalor of the lower levels of Saurian society. Zara moved through the crowded halls, overhearing fragments of conversations. The attacks on the human colonies will be blamed on rogue elements. The alliance is fragile. A few well-placed incidents and it will shatter. General Young is a fool. Trusting a former slave. Zara's fist clenched, her scales shimmering with suppressed rage. Suddenly, a high-ranking Saurian official, easily recognizable by his ornate armor and ceremonial weapons, entered the room. Counselor Ryla herself. Zara gasped inwardly. Ryla was one of the most influential members of the Saurian Council. Her presence confirmed the depth of the conspiracy. Zara attempted to subtly gather more intel, edging closer to the group. But then one of the conspirators, a scarred veteran with cold, reptilian eyes, turned and stared directly at her. His eyes narrowed. "Zara," he hissed, his voice a low rumble. "Is that you? What are you doing here?" Recognition flashed in his eyes. Zara knew she was compromised. She subtly activated her comm, sending a coded message to Anthony. Location confirmed. Conspiracy deeper than anticipated. Ryla is present, I've been made. Initiating escape sequence. Zara turned and fled, pushing through the crowd, her heart pounding in her chest. "Stop her!" The veteran roared, his voice echoing through the hall. "She's a traitor." Guards converged on her position, their weapons drawn. Zara was trapped. Cornered against a marble wall, Zara faced her pursuers. The veteran, his face twisted in a sneer, stepped forward. "Zara," he said, his voice dripping with false sympathy. "We heard what happened to you, enslaved by humans. Such a waste of potential. Come back to us, Zara. Rejoin your own people. We can make you whole again." He paused, his eyes gleaming with a predatory light. "Forget young, forget the humans. Remember who you are. Remember your duty." Zara's mind raced. Her loyalty to Anthony, to the cause of peace, warred with the ingrained instincts of her Saurian heritage, the pull of her own people, and the sting of her past humiliation. Was she truly on the right side? Or was she? The conspirator, a Saurian male with calculating eyes and a voice like polished obsidian, leaned closer. "Think of what you could reclaim, Zara. Your honor, your status. Your life before the humans stole it from you." Zara tilted her head, scales catching the dim light of the chamber. "And what would I have to do?" she asked, feigning interest. Inside, her mind raced, cataloging every shadow, every guard's patrol pattern, every potential escape route. The estate's schematics, once committed to memory during her training, were now being overlaid onto her present reality. "Only what you were born to do," the conspirator hissed, unaware of the micro-adjustments Zara was making to a nearby control panel with her three-fingered hand. "Help us remind the humans that they are not our saviors but our conquerors." A high-pitched whine pierced the air, followed by the blare of an alarm. Red lights pulsed, bathing the chamber in a bloody glow. "What's happening?" The conspirator snarled, whirling around. "A diversion," Zara said, a ghost of a smile playing on her lips. She lunged, knocking the conspirator off balance and sprinting towards a service corridor she'd pinpointed in her mental map. The chase was on. The estate, a labyrinth of corridors and hidden chambers, became her battleground. She vaulted over laser grids, squeezed through ventilation shafts, her scaled body moving with a speed and agility that belied her captivity. As she ran, she tapped a sequence onto her wrist-mounted comm, a highly compressed burst transmission containing the conspirators' names and their plan, encoded using a cipher based on ancient Saurian battle hymns. On the bridge of the Dauntless, Anthony's face tightened as the coded message flashed across the screen. "Confirm it," he barked. "It's her cipher, Commander," Lieutenant Miller confirmed, his voice tight. "She's compromised, and—" He paused, his eyes widening. "She's named names, high-ranking officials, even some on the council." "The rabbit hole goes deeper than we thought," Anthony muttered, his mind focused. "Prep the team for immediate covert insertion. I want a full combat loadout, and get me the Wraith." "Sir, that device is still in the prototype phase," Miller protested. "It's never been field-tested." "Then it's time it was," Anthony countered, his gaze unwavering. "Zara's life and possibly the lives of billions depends on it. We move now." Below, in the Dauntless's hold, the team moved with practiced efficiency, strapping on gear and running diagnostics on the Wraith. an experimental cloaking device designed to render small craft invisible to sensors. Miller approached Anthony, his face etched with concern. "Commander, with all due respect, are you sure about this? We're talking about a former slave, an alien. The risks are astronomical." Anthony met his gaze, his voice low and firm. "I trust Zara with my life, Miller, and I don't make that offer lightly. Now let's move." Back at the estate, Zara found herself cornered in a hidden chamber, a vault lined with data crystals. She recognized the symbols etched on their surfaces, fleet deployment schedules, weapon schematics, and a detailed plan for a coordinated attack on the human colony of Elysium. The lead conspirator emerged from the shadows, his face twisted with a mixture of anger and triumph. "You almost succeeded, Zara, but your little game ends here." He gestured to the data crystals. "Elysium will burn, and the humans will blame each other for failing to protect it. You were chosen specifically for this, Zara, a disgraced war hero, a symbol of human compassion. They would trust you implicitly, making our deception all the more effective." "I was a fool to ever consider your offer," Zara spat, scales dripping with anger. "I believe in the Alliance. I believe in Commander Young." The conspirator laughed, a cold, humorless sound. "Belief is a weakness, Zara. You will learn that soon enough." Outside the estate, the Dauntless shimmered, the Wraith cloaking device rendering it invisible to the estate's sensors. Anthony, at the helm, guided the ship through the perimeter defenses, his eyes narrowed in concentration. "Team 1 with me. We're going in hot. Team 2, secure the data vault. Miller, you're with them. Intel is priority." Zara, despite her exhaustion, braced herself as the conspirator advanced. She knew she was outmatched, but she wouldn't go down without a fight. She launched a series of lightning-fast strikes, aiming for pressure points and nerve clusters. The conspirator parried with ease, his superior strength and training evident. She managed to land a blow to his throat, momentarily staggering him, but he quickly recovered, grabbing her wrist in a vice-like grip. "You disappoint me, Zara," he hissed, raising a vibro blade. Just then the chamber doors exploded inward, showering the room with sparks and debris. Anthony, followed by 2 heavily armed Marines, burst into the room, weapons blazing. The conspirator roared in frustration, shoving Zara aside and engaging Anthony in a furious firefight. Lasers ripped through the air, ricocheting off the vault walls. Zara, dazed but not defeated, scrambled towards a data terminal, her 3-fingered hands flying across the controls. She uploaded the contents of the data crystals to a secure channel, sending the evidence of the planned attack directly to Anthony's command interface. A chime sounded in Anthony's helmet, and a holographic display appeared before his eyes, outlining the attack on Elysium. "Damn it," he muttered, his grip tightening on his weapon. The conspirators, realizing they were outgunned, activated a series of smoke grenades and vanished through a hidden escape hatch. "After them!" Anthony yelled, but it was too late. The conspirators were gone. He secured the chamber, turning to Zara. Relief washed over him as he saw she was relatively unharmed. He rushed to her side, pulling her into a tight embrace. "Zara," he breathed, his voice thick with emotion. "Are you all right?" She clung to him, burying her face in his shoulder. I'm all right," she whispered, her voice trembling. The warmth of his body, the strength of his arms, was a stark contrast to the cold, sterile environment of the estate. As they pulled apart, a priority message flashed across Anthony's comm. His face paled. "Elysium is under attack. It's already begun." The klaxons blared, bathing the command deck in a harsh, strobing red. "Report!" Anthony barked, his voice cutting through the alarm. "Sir, we're receiving a Priority 1 distress signal from the Kepler 186F colony," a comms officer announced, his fingers flying across the console. "They're under attack. Heavy casualties reported." Anthony's eyes sharp. He immediately barked orders, his voice calm but infused with urgency. "Helm, set a warp course for Kepler 186F. Maximum speed. Engineering, prepare for emergency combat protocols." Zara, who had been reviewing the simulation data, approached the main display, her scaled fingers already manipulating the incoming telemetry. "Commander, the attack pattern." "It's calculated. They targeted the shield generators first, then the main comms array. Efficient." Her reptilian eyes narrowed, studying the energy signatures. Their approach vector suggests they knew the weaknesses in the colony's defensive grid. Even as the fleet lurched into warp, more distress signals flooded the comms channels. "Sir, Kepler-62e, Proxima Centauri b, and Gliese 581g are reporting similar attacks," the comms officer announced, his voice strained. "This is a coordinated assault, sir." The holographic star chart on the main display pulsed with red indicators, each representing a colony under siege. Resources were stretched impossibly thin. Anthony stared at the display, his face etched with stubborn persistence. "Tactical, estimate the enemy force composition at each location. Comms, prioritize distress calls based on casualty projections." He turned to Zara, his blue eyes filled with the weight of command. "We can't be everywhere at once. Which colonies do we prioritize?" Zara tapped the display, highlighting a cluster of colonies along the outer rim. "These colonies are lightly defended and strategically important. If they fall, the enemy will have a foothold to launch further attacks." She paused, her expression hardening. "But Kepler 186f, it's a symbol, a human world. Letting it fall will embolden them." "We split the fleet," Zara stated, her voice firm. "I know it goes against standard protocol, but it's the only way to respond effectively." She outlined her idea, a plan to use a newly developed stealth system on a smaller squadron of ships to ambush the enemy. Lieutenant Miller, a seasoned officer with decades of service, stepped forward, his face etched with concern. "Commander, with respect, splitting the fleet is reckless. Standard protocols dictate we maintain a unified force. We'd be leaving those colonies vulnerable." Anthony considered Miller's words, the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He looked at Zara, her reptilian eyes unwavering. He trusted her judgment, even if it defied convention. "I understand your concerns, Lieutenant," he said, his voice resolute. "But I believe in General Zara's assessment. We're splitting the fleet." Miller's lips pursed, but he saluted crisply. "Aye, sir." As the fleet reconfigured, preparing for the split, Zara approached Anthony, her voice softer now. "Commander, I understand if you have doubts." Anthony shook his head. "I wouldn't have put you in this position if I didn't trust you, Zara." He paused, studying her. "Tell me, how did you develop this unconventional way of seeing the battlefield?" Zara hesitated, her scales shifting slightly. "It's difficult to explain." She drew a breath. Before I was enslaved, I was a strategist, a respected one. But my enemies, they saw me as a threat. They framed me for treason, stripped me of my rank, and sold me into servitude." She looked away, her voice barely a whisper. "As a slave, I learned to anticipate every move, every whim of my captors. To survive, I had to see the world through their eyes, to understand their motivations, their weaknesses." She turned back to Anthony, her eyes filled with a haunting intensity. "That's how I see the battlefield now, Commander. I anticipate the enemy because I know what it's like to be their pawn." Anthony stepped closer, his voice low and understanding. "Your past doesn't define you, Zara. It makes you uniquely qualified for this." He placed a hand on her shoulder, a gesture of solidarity and respect. "You're not a slave anymore. You're a general." The fleet executed Zara's plan flawlessly. The stealth squadron, led by Zara and Anthony, ambushed the enemy forces at Kepler 186f, catching them completely off guard. The enemy ships, caught in the crossfire, were quickly overwhelmed. "Sir, we've secured Kepler 186f, the tactical officer reported, his voice filled with relief. "Casualties are heavy, but the colony is safe." But the victory was short-lived. "Sir, we're detecting unusual energy signatures from the destroyed enemy vessels," the science officer announced. They were using advanced cloaking technology, highly advanced. Zara studied the data, her reptilian eyes widening. That technology, it's based on Saurian designs but modified, improved. A chill ran down her spine. Someone gave them access to technology that shouldn't exist outside of a few select Saurian families. Just then, a message flashed across the main display. Priority intercept. Source: compromised enemy comms channel. The message contained a single line of text. Staging point located. Epsilon Eridani system near the neutral trading hub of Tau Ceti. Anthony's face darkened. Tau Ceti was a densely populated system, a hub of interstellar commerce. Attacking a staging point so close to a neutral system would be a massive violation of galactic law, potentially triggering a wider war. Zara, what do you think? It's a trap, Zara said instantly. But we have no choice. We have to investigate. If they're using Tau Ceti as a shield, they're counting on us not attacking. She paused, her mind racing. But we can't risk a full-scale assault. Too many innocent lives at stake. She looked at Anthony, her eyes filled with a mixture of purpose and apprehension. We need to infiltrate the staging point. Disable the cloaking technology from the inside. Anthony nodded grimly. A small team, high risk of casualties. He turned to the assembled officers. Who's with me? Sir, I volunteer, Miller said immediately. Thank you, Lieutenant, Anthony said, but I need you here. You know the fleet better than anyone. I need you to hold the line if things go south. He turned to Zara. I'm leading the infiltration mission myself. With respect, Commander, Zara said, stepping forward. I must insist on joining you, that cloaking technology. I know how it works, I know its weaknesses. My knowledge is essential to the mission's success. Anthony met her gaze, seeing the commitment in her eyes. He knew she was right. Very well, he said, his voice firm. You're with me. He turned to Miller. Lieutenant, you have command of the fleet. Protect these colonies, and if we don't make it back. You will, sir, Miller interrupted, his voice filled with conviction. We'll be here when you do. As Anthony and Zara prepared for the mission, they stood together on the bridge, the hum of the ship a constant undercurrent to their thoughts. This is it, Anthony said quietly, his hand resting near hers but not quite touching. We stop them here or this war could consume everything. Zara nodded, her scales gleaming in the dim light. We will stop them, Commander, together. Just as they were about to leave, a comm signal interrupted them. Incoming transmission. Priority 1. Source: Saurian High Council, Ambassador Vorlag. Anthony frowned, exchanging a wary glance with Zara. On screen, he ordered. The holographic image of a tall, imposing Saurian male flickered into existence. Ambassador Vorlag, a high-ranking member of the Saurian High Council, regarded them with cold, reptilian eyes. Commander Young, he said, his voice smooth and measured. We have been monitoring the situation. The High Council is deeply concerned about these attacks. We wish to offer our full assistance in identifying and apprehending the perpetrators. Anthony narrowed his eyes, a sense of unease washing over him. What kind of assistance, Ambassador? Vorlag smiled, a chillingly reptilian gesture. We have certain insights into the technology being used. Information that could prove invaluable to your mission. We can provide you with a detachment of Saurian Special Forces, trained in counter-espionage and infiltration. Zara tensed beside him, her hand instinctively moving towards her sidearm. Something about Vorlag's offer felt wrong, terribly wrong. The information is appreciated, Anthony said, his voice carefully neutral as the Saurian official's image shimmered on the comm screen. However, Ambassador, we require specifics. Layout schematics, security patrol routes, guard rotations at the staging point. Without verifiable data, we cannot risk an engagement. He kept his gaze steady, betraying none of the suspicion churning in his gut. The official, a lean Saurian with calculating eyes, inclined his scaled head. Such details are sensitive, Commander, but for the sake of our alliance I shall provide them. Expect a data packet within the hour. A flicker of something unreadable crossed his features. "Be warned, Commander. Not all within that facility are as they seem. Trust is a rare commodity, even amongst our own kind." The transmission ended. Zara was already at work, sifting through the data packet as it arrived. The holographic projections of the staging point filled the briefing room, intricate details rendered in sharp relief. "This is too clean," she murmured, her three-fingered hand tracing a patrol route. "The security is almost laughably lax in certain sectors, and these structural schematics. They contradict themselves in 3 separate locations." Anthony leaned closer, studying the inconsistencies. "Traps," he stated grimly. "They're expecting us, or at least someone is." "The ambassador's warning," Zara said, her voice tight. He knows they plan to betray us, but he also is telling us." They spent the next hour dissecting the flawed intel, identifying the likely locations of ambushes and hidden defenses. The original plan, a direct assault on the staging point, was scrapped. Instead, they opted for a more subtle approach. A modified stealth shuttle, equipped with advanced cloaking technology and armed with plasma disruptors, would slip past the outer defenses. As the shuttle approached the staging point, a massive orbital repair facility disguised as a derelict asteroid field, Zara felt a knot of apprehension tighten in her chest. The facility loomed before them, a sprawling network of docking bays and maintenance tunnels, its true purpose masked by layers of deception. But the deception didn't hold for long. As they penetrated deeper into the facility, they stumbled upon a hidden section, a clandestine research lab bathed in sterile white light. And within that lab, humans, captured, restrained, subjected to horrific experiments. Their bodies were scarred, their eyes hollow with pain and despair. Zara recoiled, a guttural sound escaping her throat. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of blood and the acrid stench of chemicals. Her scales prickled with a cold fury, a primal rage ignited by the sight of such cruelty. "They are torturing them," she hissed, her voice trembling, "using them as animals." The memory of her own enslavement, the humiliation and degradation crashed over her. But this was different. This was a violation of everything she now held sacred. Her loyalty to Anthony, her newfound respect for humanity, solidified into an unbreakable vow. "I will make them pay," she vowed, her silver eyes blazing. "I will tear this place apart." They pressed on, deeper into the lab complex, and encountered a small group of Saurian scientists huddled around a console. They were young, idealistic, and utterly oblivious to the true nature of their work. They believed they were developing new medical technologies, strengthening their species, securing their future. "We mean you no harm," Anthony said, his voice calm but firm. "But you must understand what is truly happening here. These humans are not test subjects. They are prisoners. They are being tortured. Your research is being used for unspeakable acts." One of the scientists, a young female with bright, intelligent eyes named Lyra, looked up, her expression a mixture of confusion and fear. What are you saying? This cannot be true." "It is true," Zara said, stepping forward. "I was once a slave like these humans. I know what it is to be used, to be broken. These people. They deserve better. Your people deserve better." Lyra hesitated, her gaze darting between Anthony, Zara, and the captive humans. "But my superiors, they would never allow this. They would punish me, us, severely." Zara's voice softened, filled with the pain of her past. "I know what it is to be afraid," she said quietly. "But fear cannot control us. We must be brave. We must do what is right, even when it is difficult." She paused, her gaze locking with Lyra's. "I was a slave. I was betrayed by my own kind, but Commander Young, he saw something in me. He gave me a chance. And now I fight alongside him for the freedom of all. You can do the same." Lyra's eyes widened, a spark of hope flickering within them. She looked at the console, at the intricate controls for the cloaking technology that concealed the facility from the outside world. I can help," she stammered. "I know the access codes. I can disable the system." As Lyra worked feverishly at the console, a squad of heavily armed Saurian guards burst into the lab, their weapons raised and aimed. "Traitors!" their leader roared. "You will all pay for this." The lab erupted in a cacophony of gunfire. Anthony and Zara reacted instantly, diving for cover and returning fire with deadly accuracy. Plasma bolts ripped through the air, searing flesh and metal. The Saurian guards, caught off guard by the sudden attack, fell one by one. Lyra, caught in the crossfire, cried out as a plasma bolt grazed her side. She stumbled but managed to reach the main control panel, her fingers flying across the keys. With a final, desperate effort, she slammed her hand down on the activation switch. The cloaking field flickered and died, revealing the staging point in all its brutal reality. But the act triggered an alarm, a deafening klaxon that echoed through the facility. "We have to go," Anthony yelled, grabbing Zara's arm. Now, they fought their way back to the stealth shuttle, leaving a trail of fallen Saurian guards in their wake. Lyra lay slumped against the console, her eyes closed, a faint smile on her lips. Her sacrifice had bought them the time they needed. The stealth shuttle, battered and smoking, limped away from the staging point, narrowly evading a barrage of laser fire. As they warped into hyperspace, a garbled message crackled over the comm system. "Commander Young, this is Lieutenant Miller, massive Saurian fleet, approaching the neutral system. Repeat, massive fleet." The transmission cut out, leaving them alone in the cold, silent void, facing a threat far greater than they could have ever imagined. "Blockade," Anthony finished, the last word of Miller's distorted transmission echoing in the command center. Static hissed from the comms panel. "Damn it. Can we clean that up any further, Lieutenant?" A young comms officer shook his head, sweat beading on his forehead. "Negative, Commander. Signal's too degraded. We're lucky we got anything at all." Zara, her scaled hand hovering over the holographic display of the system, spoke, her voice tight. "The blockade. It heads for the neutral system, and it is not merely defensive. Look at the fleet composition. An unusual number of warships escorting the transports. This is not containment, this is invasion." Her three-fingered hand tightened into a fist, Anthony's teeth clenched. "All remaining units prepare for a defensive stand. Alert the civilian population. Evacuate if possible, but priority is defense." He turned back to Zara, his gaze softening slightly. "How long do we have?" Zara's scales seemed to darken with suppressed rage. The revelation of the human experiments, Lyra's fate, hung heavy in the air. At their current speed, 12 hours, perhaps less, they intend to take the system swiftly. She stared at the projected star map, but her eyes didn't seem to focus. Anthony stepped closer, his voice low. "Zara." He waited until her reptilian eyes met his. "I know what you're feeling, but Lyra wouldn't want you consumed by this. Use it. Use that anger, that grief. Let it sharpen your mind. You see the battlefield in ways we can't. What do you see?" Zara closed her eyes for a moment, then opened them, the grief hardening into willpower. "They expect a conventional defense. They will anticipate our fleet massing at the primary jump gate." She tapped the display. "But their communication network, it is centralized, vulnerable." "Go on," Anthony urged. "A surgical strike, a small, highly skilled team. We target their key communication relays, disrupt their command structure, create chaos." Anthony studied the display, his brow furrowed in thought. Risky, but with their fleet spread thin, it could work. "You're suggesting we take the fight to them before they're fully established?" He met her gaze, a flicker of admiration in his eyes. "All right, General, I'm greenlighting this. Assemble your strike team, you lead it." As the command center buzzed with activity, Zara stood alone for a moment, her gaze fixed on a small, unlit corner of the room. "Lyra, I failed you once. I won't fail you again. I will avenge you, and I will stop this conspiracy despite the toll." Minutes later, aboard a heavily modified, cloaked corvette, the Shadowclaw, Zara briefed her team. "Humans and Saurians, the best of both worlds, united by a common purpose. We approach the Saurian fleet under cloak." Zara explained, pointing to a schematic of the fleet layout. Our primary objective is to reach Relay Station Gamma 7, plant the virus, disrupt their communications. As the Shadowclaw slipped into the void, the sensors registered something unexpected. "Commander," a Saurian sensor operator hissed, "multiple command signals, the fleet. It is not unified. There are distinct signatures emanating from different vessels." Zara's eyes narrowed. "Show me the analysis." The display shifted, highlighting the various command frequencies. "That signature. It is Vorlag's, General Vorlag, a known opponent of the conspiracy." Anthony, standing beside her, raised an eyebrow. "Vorlag, you think he might be willing to help us?" "It is a gamble," Zara admitted. "But Vorlag is honorable if ruthless. He values stability. This conspiracy threatens everything he believes in." "All right," Anthony decided. "Let's take that gamble. Send a coded message to Vorlag's flagship. Reveal the human experimentation. Provide him with proof." The tension in the Shadowclaw was palpable as they waited for a response. Minutes stretched into an eternity. Finally, a coded reply flickered across the screen. "Outrageous. Unacceptable. But I cannot openly defy the Council without risking a civil war. I will provide what covert assistance I can. Prepare for disruptions. Defense systems on sectors 4, 7, and 12 will experience malfunctions." Zara nodded grimly. "Vorlag is with us. He cannot fight openly, but he will create opportunities." Using Vorlag's covert assistance, the Shadowclaw slipped through the weakened defenses, reaching Relay Station Gamma 7 undetected. Zara, along with 2 Saurian engineers, moved swiftly through the station, bypassing security checkpoints and disabling surveillance systems. Reaching the central control room, Zara personally uploaded the virus, her 3 fingers flying across the console. "Release the Kraken," she murmured. As the virus spread, chaos erupted within the Saurian fleet. Ships collided, communication lines collapsed, and sensor arrays malfunctioned. Panic gripped the bridge of Vorkarian's flagship as the conspiracy's carefully laid plans began to unravel. Back on the Shadowclaw, Zara monitored the unfolding chaos. "Now, Commander, the time to strike is now." The fleet is blind, deaf, and crippled. Anthony, coordinating the human forces from the command center, unleashed a series of surprise attacks, targeting the weakened Saurian vessels. Fighter squadrons darted through the confusion, missile barrages tore through damaged hulls, and human warships unleashed their full firepower. General Zara, a human tactical officer, reported, "Vorkarian's flagship, the Serpent's Kiss, is attempting to re-establish command. They are rerouting power to their primary comm array." Zara studied the tactical display, her reptilian eyes gleaming with strategic insight. "A desperate move, but it leaves them vulnerable. All power diverted to communications. Their shields will be weakened. I have a plan, a risky one, but it could disable the Serpent's Kiss and break the blockade." The silence was unsettling. Zara adjusted her grip on her pulse rifle, the familiar weight a small comfort. "Anything." She murmured into her comm, her 3-fingered hand tightening around the grip. "Negative," replied Sergeant Miller, his voice crisp and professional. "Breaching point clear." No sign of resistance. They moved deeper into the flagship, the corridors cold and sterile. The silence stretched, amplifying the hum of the ship's engines and the rhythmic thud of their boots. Zara consulted the holographic schematics projected from her wrist-mounted device. Something was off. "Hold," she ordered, her voice sharp. "The internal layout. It doesn't match the schematics." "What do you mean, General?" Miller asked, his tone tinged with concern. "The service conduits on Deck 4 should be branching off to the port side. Here they're rerouted to starboard." She tapped the display, highlighting the discrepancy. Vorlag's information was incomplete, or worse. As if on cue, the corridor ahead erupted in a hail of plasma fire. Elite Saurian guards, clad in crimson armor, emerged from hidden alcoves, their weapons spitting emerald bolts. They moved with a speed and ferocity that spoke of specialized training. "Contact!" Elite Saurian infantry, Miller yelled, diving for cover behind an overturned crate. The strike team returned fire, the sharp crack of human pulse rifles echoing in the confined space. They employed standard human tactical maneuvers suppressing fire, flanking movements, but the Saurian guards were well prepared, anticipating their every move. One of the human soldiers cried out, clutching his leg. Another slumped against the wall, unmoving. Casualties. General, we're taking heavy fire, Miller shouted over the din. We need a new plan, Zara's mind raced. Vorlag's betrayal. Vorkarian's trap. This was a carefully orchestrated ambush. She activated her comm. Anthony, the schematics are wrong, we're facing heavy resistance, requesting authorization to deviate from the original plan. A moment of static, then Anthony's voice, calm and steady. Acknowledged, Zara. Your judgment is paramount. Proceed as you see fit. We're initiating a diversionary attack on the outer perimeter to draw their attention. Understood. Zara barked orders to the team. Miller, Davis, cover the rear. We're rerouting to the central control room. We need to disable Vorkarian's command systems manually. They fought their way through the corridors, the bodies of fallen soldiers, both human and Saurian, littering the deck. As they neared the control room, the ship began to shudder. Lights flickered and the hum of the engine stuttered. What's happening? Davis asked, his voice strained. The virus, Zara replied grimly. It's beginning to take effect. Suddenly, the lights flickered and died, plunging the corridor into near darkness. Emergency lights kicked in, casting long, distorted shadows. A klaxon blared, its shrill cry echoing through the ship. System failure detected, a synthetic voice announced. Initiating failsafe protocol, shutting down all non-essential systems. Damn it, Zara swore. Vorkarian anticipated this. As they reached the control room, the heavy blast doors slammed shut with a deafening clang, sealing them inside. They were trapped. Anthony, we're locked in the control room, Zara reported. The virus triggered a failsafe. We're cut off. Hold tight, Zara, Anthony replied. We're doing everything we can. Zara approached the control panel, her fingers flying across the glowing interfaces. She knew Saurian engineering, the intricate network of circuits and protocols. There had to be a way to override the lockdown. After a tense moment, the blast doors shuttered and slowly began to retract. As they slid open, Zara raised her pulse rifle, ready for anything. Standing in the doorway, bathed in the eerie red glow of the emergency lights, was Vorkarian himself. His crimson eyes gleamed with malice. "Welcome, General," he hissed, his voice dripping with sarcasm. "I've been expecting you." "Vorkarian," Zara spat, her hand tightening on her weapon. "You should have stayed a slave, Zara," Vorkarian said, his voice filled with contempt. "It was a better fate than this. I knew Vorlag would betray me, so I modified my flagship systems to be immune to his sabotage." A tense standoff ensued. "You underestimate me, Vorkarian," Zara said, her voice cold and steady. "I learned a few things during my enslavement." Zara pressed a button on her wrist device. A small EMP device hidden beneath her armor activated with a hum. The remaining systems on the flagship flickered and died, plunging the control room into complete darkness. Even Vorkarian's personal armor went dark. "What have you done?" Vorkarian roared, his voice filled with rage. He lunged at Zara, his claws extended. Despite her training, Vorkarian was stronger, faster. He slammed her against the wall, the impact knocking the wind out of her. Just as Vorkarian was about to deliver the killing blow, the flagship shuddered violently. Alarms blared and the sound of explosions echoed through the ship. "What's happening?" Vorkarian snarled, momentarily distracted. "Vorlag's forces," Zara gasped, struggling to her feet. "He's attacking." Chaos erupted. Vorlag's loyalists clashed with Vorkarian's guards, the corridors filled with the sounds of gunfire, explosions, and screams. Zara seized the opportunity to escape, slipping through the darkened corridors, separated from her team. She found herself alone, lost in the labyrinthine depths of Vorkarian's flagship. The darkness pressed in around her, thick and suffocating, the only sound her own ragged breathing. Zara navigated the darkened corridors, her three-fingered hands trailing along the cold, metallic walls. The EMP had plunged the flagship into near-total darkness, the emergency lights flickering erratically, casting long, distorted shadows. Her saurian eyes, far more sensitive than human eyes, granted her a crucial advantage, allowing her to pick out details others would miss. The faint shimmer of energy conduits, the disturbed dust motes hanging in the stagnant air, the subtle shift in temperature emanating from a damaged bulkhead. The air tasted of ozone and burnt metal, a harsh reminder of the ship's precarious state. She discovered a maintenance tunnel tucked away behind a dislodged panel. Hope flickered within her, quickly extinguished as she assessed the damage. Twisted metal blocked half the passage, and sparks showered down from severed cables. The tunnel offered a potential escape route, but it was a death trap waiting to happen. A low growl vibrating through the deck plates sent a shiver down her spine. Vorkarian. He had recovered from the initial blast and was hunting her. She could sense his presence, a heavy, oppressive weight osing in. He would be using his personal guard, elite saurian warriors equipped with specialized tracking technology. She had to move, and fast. Rounding a corner, she stumbled upon a small group of humans huddled behind an overturned cargo container. They were members of the strike team, their armor scorched, their faces grim. One clutched a bleeding arm, another coughed raggedly. They were injured but still combat effective. "General Zara," one of them asked, his voice hoarse. "Commander," she corrected automatically. "What is your status?" "Separated during the EMP blast," the human replied. "We've been trying to regroup, but it's chaos out there." He paused, taking a shaky breath. "Vorlag's forces are tearing through the ship, full-scale boarding action. They're engaging Vorkarian's loyalists everywhere." Vorlag. The name was a viper's strike. Zara's mind raced. This wasn't just a power struggle between Vorkarian and the humans. It was a saurian civil war erupting on a human flagship. "We need to reach the bridge," she said, her voice firm. "Seize control before Vorlag does." The strike team nodded, their eyes hardening with tenacity. "Lead the way, Commander." As they moved through the ship, weapons fire echoed from every direction. Blue plasma bolts clashed with the green energy blasts of saurian disruptors. The air grew thick with the smell of blood and burning flesh. Suddenly, a garbled transmission crackled over the comms. It was Vorkarian, his voice imbued with fury. "Vorlag, treachery. Capture the flagship." The transmission cut out, leaving Zara with a chilling realization. Vorlag wasn't trying to defeat Vorkarian, he was trying to steal the flagship, intact. "He wants it as a symbol," Zara said, her voice low. "A symbol of power to solidify his own position. He doesn't care about freeing the enslaved. He only cares about himself." The thought sickened her. She had hoped, however foolishly, that Vorlag represented something better. "We can't let him get away with it," one of the humans said. "What do you suggest, Commander?" Zara paused, her mind working at lightning speed. "We sabotage the navigation systems. Prevent him from escaping, even if it means destroying the ship." A flicker of hesitation crossed the humans' faces, but they didn't argue. They had come to trust her judgment. Just then, Anthony's voice crackled over her comm. "Zara, what's your status? Vorlag's fleet is overwhelming Vorkarian's remaining forces. The flagship is about to fall." His voice was strained with concern. "I know," Zara replied, her voice tight. "We're heading to the bridge to initiate a lockdown. We're going to make sure Vorlag doesn't leave with this ship, even if it means we go down with it." "Understood," Anthony said. "We're prepping for immediate extraction. Just hold on." They fought their way towards the bridge, each corridor a gauntlet of death. They encountered heavy resistance from both Vorkarian's loyalists and Vorlag's boarding parties. Zara used her knowledge of the ship systems to create diversions, rerouting power to overload junction boxes, venting atmosphere to flush out corridors. She turned the flagship's defenses against both sides, creating chaos and confusion. As they neared the bridge, a figure emerged from the shadows, Vorkarian. He was battered and bruised, but his eyes burned with cold fury. "Traitor," he hissed, his voice raspy. "I knew Vorlag was planning something. I was using this situation to eliminate a rival." He gestured to Zara. "Join me. Help me repel Vorlag's forces and I will restore your honor. I will grant you a position of power in my regime." Zara stared at him, her expression unreadable. The offer was tempting, a chance to reclaim everything she had lost. But then she thought of Anthony, of the humans who had accepted her, of the hope she had found in their cause. "I refuse," she said, her voice ringing with conviction. "My allegiance is to Commander Young, and to humanity." She activated the sabotage sequence for the navigation systems, her fingers flying across the console. Vorkarian roared in rage, lunging at her. But this time, Zara was prepared. She knew his fighting style, his strengths and weaknesses. She used her agility to evade his clumsy attacks, her scaled hide deflecting his blows. The strike team surged forward, engaging Vorkarian in a desperate fight. Plasma fire lit up the bridge, illuminating the carnage. Zara ignored them, focusing on completing the sabotage sequence. Her fingers danced across the console, bypassing security protocols, rerouting power. The navigation systems began to hum, then whine as they were pushed beyond their limits. She transmitted a coded message to Anthony, relaying their situation and requesting immediate extraction. "The navigation systems are overloading," she said, her voice tight with urgency. "Get us out of here, Commander, before it's too late." Just then, Vorlag's forces breached the bridge, overwhelming Vorkarian's remaining guards. Vorlag himself strode onto the bridge, his eyes gleaming with triumph. He grabbed Vorkarian by the throat, lifting him off the ground. "The flagship is mine," he declared. But as he prepared to take control, the sabotage sequence activated. The navigation systems overloaded with a deafening shriek, the consoles sparking and spitting. The ship began to shake violently, the artificial gravity fluctuating wildly. Vorlag stared in disbelief as the flagship began to destabilize, its fate sealed. The flagship groaned, a wounded beast of metal and fury. Alarms blared, their strident cries swallowed by the deeper rumble of internal explosions. Corridors buckled, spitting sparks and venting atmosphere in icy bursts. Zara coughed, her throat raw from the acrid smoke that billowed from a severed power conduit. Vorlag's voice, amplified but strained, cut through the din. "Engineering teams report. Navigation systems are critical. Restore them at once." The order was a futile scream against the dying breath of the ship. The damage was too widespread, the fires too fierce. Zara knew it, and the fear in Vorlag's voice confirmed it. A flicker of movement caught her eye. Vorlag, flanked by two hulking guards, was striding towards a launch bay. He barked orders at a tech, his reptilian face contorted with rage. "Prepare my shuttle and bring Vorkarian. He will be persuaded to be more useful elsewhere." He was abandoning ship, leaving the flagship to die. Zara's hand tightened around her salvaged plasma pistol. She had to get a message out. She scrambled to a comm station, ignoring the searing heat radiating from a ruptured coolant line. With trembling fingers, she overrode the failing system and sent a desperate compressed burst transmission. "Flagship critical. Vorlag escaping with Vorkarian. Need immediate evac. Coordinates attached." Onboard the Dauntless, the message flashed across Anthony's command console. He swore, a guttural sound that cut through the bridge's controlled chaos. "Prepare a shuttle. Heavy weapons Lin, out." "I'm going in." Lieutenant Davies, his XO, stepped forward, his face etched with concern. "Commander, with all due respect, that's insane. The flagship is destabilizing. We're under orders to maintain a safe distance and provide fire support." Anthony's face hardened. "Orders be damned, Davies. Zara is on that ship. We're not leaving her to die. Get the shuttle ready." His voice brooked no argument, but his eyes held a flicker of something Davies recognized, a cold, unwavering tenacity. "Aye, sir," Davies conceded, his voice tight. "But I'm going with you. Someone needs to try and talk some sense into you if this goes sideways." The shuttle, a heavily armored transport jam-packed with plasma cannons, sliced through the void towards the dying flagship. Explosions rippled across its hull, sending gouts of superheated plasma into space. Turrets tracked their approach, spitting emerald bolts of energy. The shields flickered, straining under the barrage. Zara fought her way through the burning corridors, her scaled armor scorched and blackened. Each step was a battle against collapsing bulkheads and venting atmosphere. She reached the designated extraction point, Launch Bay Gamma, only to find it crawling with Vorlag's elite guard. He clearly wasn't taking any chances. Then she saw them. Huddled in the shadows near a deactivated escape pod, a group of Saurian slaves, their eyes wide with terror. Abandoned, forgotten, left to die with the ship. "You help us." One of them, a young female with faded scales, cried out, "Please, get us out of here." Zara hesitated. She had to reach the extraction point to meet Anthony, but she couldn't leave them. "Follow me," she said, her voice hoarse. "I can get you out. Vorlag has abandoned you. He cares nothing for your lives." Distrust clouded their eyes. "You serve the humans now," another slave hissed, his voice permeated with venom. "You are one of them. Why should we trust you?" "Because I was one of you," Zara said, her voice firm. "And I know what it is to be a slave. Vorlag offers you only death. I offer you freedom." On board the shuttle, the docking clamps locked onto Launch Bay Gamma. The boarding ramp slammed down and Anthony, plasma rifle raised, led his strike team into the inferno. "Zara, this is Young, respond." His voice echoed through the ruined bay. Vorlag, monitoring the shuttle's approach from his own vessel, snarled, "Fools, they walk into my trap." He barked orders into his comm. "Seal off Launch Bay Gamma, kill them all." Zara, leading the hesitant slaves, heard Vorlag's order. She knew then that the extraction point was a death trap. "This way," she shouted, shoving the slaves forward. "We have to find another way." She led them through a maze of service tunnels, emerging behind Vorlag's unsuspecting guards at Launch Bay Gamma. With a roar, the slaves charged, wielding salvaged tools and pieces of wreckage. The guards, caught completely off guard, faltered. Anthony and his team burst into the bay, weapons blazing. The firefight was immediate, brutal, and deafening. Plasma bolts ripped through the air, tearing through metal and flesh. Zara saw Anthony across the bay, his face grim but determined. He saw her too, and a flicker of relief crossed his features. "Zara!" He yelled, firing a burst of plasma that sent a guard sprawling. "Get to the shuttle, we'll cover you." "Not without them," Zara shouted back, gesturing to the fleeing slaves. "They're coming with us." Vorlag, enraged by the unexpected resistance, stormed into the bay, his personal guard flanking him. He saw Zara fighting alongside the humans, and his eyes narrowed with fury. "Zara! What treachery is this?" he bellowed, his voice echoing through the chaos. "You betray your own kind. Return to me. I will forgive this lapse in judgment. I will grant you power beyond your wildest dreams." Zara leveled her plasma pistol at Vorlag, her hand steady. "I am no longer your slave, Vorlag," she said, her voice ringing with defiance. "I choose my own path. And I choose to stand with those who value freedom and honor above power and tradition." Vorlag's face twisted with rage. "So be it," he hissed. "You have chosen your death." He raised his hand and activated a small device on his wrist. "I will not allow you to escape me. The ship will die and you with it." A synthesized voice echoed through the ship. "Self-destruct sequence initiated." T-5 minutes. Panic surged through the bay. Anthony swore. "We have to get out of here, now." He and Zara, along with the surviving members of the strike team, fought their way towards the shuttle, shielding the fleeing slaves. Vorlag blocked their path, his eyes burning with fanaticism. "You cannot win, Zara. Your human friends cannot save you." Zara stepped in front of Anthony, her scales shimmering in the flickering light. They already have, she said. They showed me what it means to be free. The alarms wailed, counting down the seconds. T-minus 2 minutes. The race to the shuttle was a desperate scramble through collapsing corridors and burning wreckage. They reached the boarding ramp just as the countdown hit 0. The shuttle lurched free of the flagship, its engine screaming as it clawed its way into the void. Then the flagship detonated. A blinding flash engulfed the shuttle, followed by a shockwave that ripped through space. The shuttle bucked violently, alarms blaring. Debris slammed against the hull. The Dauntless shuddered, its lights flickering. Several of the rescued slaves screamed, clutching at their wounds. The escape had been bought at a terrible price. The shuttle shuddered, groaning under the strain of atmospheric entry. Alarms blared, a discordant symphony punctuated by the ragged coughs of the injured saurian slaves. The air hung thick with the metallic tang of blood and the acrid scent of burnt wiring. Zara, her scaled hands stained crimson, worked with a frantic efficiency. A young saurian, his leg twisted at an unnatural angle, whimpered in pain. "Hold still," she commanded, her voice surprisingly gentle. She barked instructions to a human medic, pointing to a pressure bandage in the medkit. "Apply that there tightly. It will slow the bleeding." Her three-fingered hand moved with practiced skill, triaging injuries, prioritizing those closest to death. She knew the saurian physiology, the delicate balance of their reptilian-mammalian systems, better than any human. Anthony, his face grim, fought his way to the cockpit. "Status report." He barked over the din. "Life support failing, Commander," the pilot responded, his voice strained. "We're losing altitude fast. ETA to friendly lines. 10 minutes best case." Anthony keyed his comm. "Command, this is Commander Young. Shuttle is heavily damaged, life support failing. Multiple casualties requiring immediate medical attention. Request immediate assistance." Static crackled for a moment before a voice, crisp and professional, responded. "Understood, Commander. We're tracking your location. Assistance is en route. However," a pause heavy with unspoken concern, "we note the presence of saurian personnel. Exercise extreme caution, Commander." Zara, overhearing the exchange, felt a familiar sting of resentment. Even in rescue, they were viewed with suspicion. She pressed a cool cloth to the forehead of the injured saurian, her crests twitching in suppressed anger. The minutes crawled by. As they waited, Zara found herself speaking to Anthony, the roar of the engines a constant backdrop to her confession. "Vorlag. He orchestrated my downfall. He saw me as a threat, a rival for power. He fabricated evidence, manipulated the court. Made me a traitor in the eyes of my own people." Her voice was low, imbued with bitterness. "He took everything from me, my rank, my honor, my freedom." She looked up, her reptilian eyes burning with a fierce intensity. "I will have my revenge." The rumble of a larger ship echoed through the shuttle's hull. Relief washed over the injured, their moans subsiding into quiet sighs. The hatch hissed open, revealing the sterile interior of a rescue vessel. The rescued slaves were led to temporary quarters, cramped but clean. Zara addressed them, her voice ringing with authority. "You are safe now. You are among allies. I vouch for your loyalty. Obey their commands and you will be treated with respect." Later, in a sterile briefing room, Anthony and Zara stood before Admiral Nis, a stern woman with steely gray eyes. "Commander Young," she said, her voice sharp, "your bravery is commendable, but I must question the wisdom of bringing these former slaves into our fleet. Can we truly trust them?" "Admiral," Zara interjected, her voice steady, "I understand your concerns. But I know Vorlag. I know his strategies, his weaknesses. I can help you defeat him." She laid out a detailed analysis of Vorlag's recent maneuvers, predicting his next move with uncanny accuracy. She detailed Vorlag's reliance on brute force, his tendency to overextend his flanks, and the specific vulnerabilities of his flagship's shield configuration. Admiral Nis listened intently, her expression slowly shifting from skepticism to grudging respect. "That's insightful, General Zara. Very well. I will integrate you into the planning for the next phase of the campaign. But even as Zara's strategic brilliance began to sway the admiral, whispers spread through the fleet. A slave, a general, what is young thinking? They say she's got him bewitched. Trust a Saurian, never. One evening, Zara returned to her quarters to find chaos. Her few personal belongings, a small data slate containing family hollows, a worn copy of Sun Tzu's Art of War, were scattered across the floor, ripped and broken. Scrawled on the wall in crude Saurian script was a single chilling word: traitor. Anthony arrived moments later, his face a mask of fury. Who did this? He demanded, his voice low and dangerous. He ran a hand along the wall, his fingers brushing against the still wet paint. I'll find them, Zara, I promise you. Zara stood amidst the wreckage of her life, her scaled shoulders slumped. Thank you, Anthony, she said softly, for everything. I know I am putting you at risk. Later that night, under the cold light of the artificial stars in Anthony's quarters, they spoke in hushed tones. Why are you doing this? Zara asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why are you risking so much for me? Anthony met her gaze, his eyes filled with a warmth that sent a shiver down her spine. Because I believe in you, Zara, and because... He paused, choosing his words carefully. I care about you. Just then, a calm alert blared. Admiral Niss's face flickered onto the screen. Commander Young, report to my office immediately. Vorlag has regrouped. He's planning a new attack on Kepler 186F. In the war room, holographic projections shimmered, displaying the strategic importance of the human colony on Kepler 186F. Vorlag is targeting our primary fuel depot, Niss explained, her voice grim. If he takes it, we're crippled. Anthony and Zara huddled over the maps, their minds racing. He'll come in hard and fast, Zara said, tracing a route with her clawed finger. He'll expect us to defend the depot directly. But we won't, Anthony said, a glint of drive in his eyes. We'll use his aggression against him. Zara leaned closer, her crests rippling with excitement. I have a plan, she said, her voice barely a whisper. It's risky, but it might just work. She outlined a daring strategy, one that relied on exploiting a weakness in Vorlag's battle strategy, a blind spot born of his arrogance. It required splitting their forces, leaving the depot vulnerable and trusting a small, elite team to strike at Vorlag's flagship at the precise moment of engagement. Admiral Niss listened, her expression hardening. That's insane, General Zara, it's too risky. We can't leave the depot undefended. The colony depends on it. Anthony stepped forward, his voice firm. Admiral, with all due respect, it's our only chance. Zara knows Vorlag better than anyone. We have to trust her judgment. He locked eyes with Niss, his gaze unwavering. We have to try. General, Admiral Niss said, her voice tight, I'm approving your revised strategy, but understand this. The conditions are stringent. Any deviation, any misstep, and I will terminate the operation. You will have constant oversight from my staff. This is not a blank check. Zara nodded, her scaled face impassive. Understood, Admiral. The strategic human colony in question was Ethelgard, a jewel of agricultural production. Hollow images flashed across the briefing room, depicting rolling fields of golden grain, vast hydroponic farms, and bustling civilian settlements. Ethelgard provides nearly 30% of our food supply for this sector, a human officer explained. Its loss would cripple our war effort, not to mention the millions of civilians who call it home. Zara began working with a human team to adapt her plan to human technology and available resources. The initial meetings were tense. General, with all due respect, Captain Eva Rostova said, her arms crossed, your proposed flanking maneuver is unorthodox. Our ships aren't designed for that kind of rapid deployment. Saurian ships are, Zara countered, her voice even. But human ships can be modified. We use what we have, Captain, and we adapt. Anthony Obzarin, G. the Friction, stepped in. Captain Rostova, I'm reassigning you and Lieutenant Phillips to General Zara's team. Your expertise in ship modification will be invaluable. He met Rostova's gaze, his expression firm. "I expect your full cooperation." As the team delved deeper into the plan, the investigation into the sabotage continued. The perpetrator had access to Level 5 classified information, an investigator reported to Anthony. That suggests a mole, someone high up in command. Later that day, Zara walked past a group of human officers in the corridor. Their voices dropped as she approached, but she still caught snippets of their conversation. "Trust a former slave. Risking everything. Young's gone soft." The word stung, rekindling old wounds. The memory of her enslavement, the shame and humiliation flooded back. She quickened her pace, trying to block out the voices, but the self-doubt lingered. Anthony, having witnessed the exchange, confronted the officers. "I understand you have concerns," he said, his voice low but carrying authority. "But let me be clear, General Zara has my full confidence. Prejudice has no place in this fleet. Focus on your duties and trust that I know what I'm doing." That evening, Zara found Anthony in his quarters reviewing battle simulations. "Why do you trust me, Commander?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "They're right. I was a slave. How can you be sure I won't betray you?" Anthony looked up, his gaze meeting hers. "Because I see a general, Zara, a brilliant strategist, and because I know what it's like to be doubted." He paused, a flicker of pain in his eyes. "Years ago, during the Krellian conflict, I proposed a radical new defense strategy. My superiors dismissed it, called me reckless. Thousands died because they wouldn't listen. I won't make that mistake again." He leaned forward, his voice softening. "Everyone faces doubts, Zara. The key is not to let them control you." Suddenly, a klaxon blared through the ship. Red lights flashed, bathing the room in an ominous glow. "Report." Anthony barked into the comm. "Sir, we're under attack. Vorlag's fleet has launched a preemptive strike against the Gamma-7 communications relay. It's down." Chaos erupted. The loss of the relay disrupted human defenses, creating confusion and panic. Zara, however, remained calm, her mind racing. "We modify the plan," she said, her voice firm. "We initiate the flanking maneuver immediately. We have to take Vorlag by surprise." As Zara briefed the fleet on the revised plan, she studied the incoming data streams. Something didn't feel right. Vorlag's attack patterns. They were too predictable. He was anticipating their defensive strategy. A chill ran down her spine. "There's a leak," she said, her voice low. "Vorlag knows what we're planning. What do you suggest, General?" Rostova asked, her voice imbued with urgency. "We change the plan again," Zara said, her eyes narrowing. "We improvise. Vorlag expects us to follow a logical course of action. We'll give him something illogical." She outlined a daring counter-maneuver, a risky feint that required precise timing and coordination. As the fleet began its redeployment, a critical piece of equipment on Zara's flagship, the Dauntless, malfunctioned. "The hyperdrive regulator is failing, General," a technician shouted. "We're losing power. We won't be able to jump to hyperspace." If they couldn't repair the regulator, their position would be exposed to Vorlag's forces. Zara and Anthony rushed to the engineering bay, their faces grim. "I know Saurian tech," Zara said, examining the damaged component. "And I know human engineering," Anthony added. "Together, we can fix this." Working side by side, they diagnosed the problem, their combined knowledge bridging the gap between human and Saurian technology. Sparks flew as they rerouted power conduits and jury-rigged a temporary solution. Finally, with seconds to spare, the regulator flickered back to life. "Hyperdrive online," the technician announced, but the malfunction had not gone unnoticed. "Sir, we're picking up a small squadron of Vorlag's ships on our tail," a sensor operator reported. "They detected our energy surge." The Dauntless, along with the rest of the fleet, initiated the hyperspace jump, hoping to escape Vorlag's pursuing ships. But as they dropped out of hyperspace, they were met with a terrifying sight. Vorlag's entire fleet was waiting for them, a wall of warships blocking their path. They had jumped directly into an ambush. The void erupted in fire. A wave of concussive force slammed into the Dauntless, Commander Anthony Young's flagship, throwing crew members from their stations. Alarms blared, a cacophony of red alerts and klaxons that amplified the chaos. "Report!" Young barked, gripping the arms of his command chair. On the bridge's holographic display, the orderly formation of the human Saurian fleet had dissolved into a maelstrom of explosions and twisting metal. Vorlag's ambush fleet, cloaked until the last moment, had struck with brutal efficiency. A reptilian hand, 3 scaled fingers gripping a console, moved with practiced speed. Dispersal maneuver. All ships, execute pattern Alpha 7. Break formation and evade. Zara's voice cut through the din, calm and decisive. Her saurian eyes, usually narrowed in thought, were wide with focus, calculating trajectories and escape vectors. The fleet responded, ships veering wildly, scattering like startled prey. But the damage was done. The Indomitable, a heavy cruiser, blossomed into a fireball. The Serpent's Kiss, a saurian frigate, spun out of control, its shields collapsed. The ambush had been devastating. Shields at 40%. A voice crackled over the comms. Hull breaches on decks 3 and 5. Another voice, strained with panic, reported, life support failing in Section 4. Anthony fought to maintain control. "Zara, give me an analysis. What are we facing?" Zara's fingers danced across the console, sifting through sensor data. "Vorlag's using a new type of disruptor cannon. It bypasses our shield harmonics, and they knew our hyperspace route. They were waiting for us at the precise coordinates." The surviving ships, battered and bruised, began to regroup, but the strategic damage was immense. They were scattered, vulnerable, and far from their destination, the beleaguered human colony of Elysium. Zara pointed to a flickering icon on the display. "The FTL drive on the Stalwart is offline. They're stranded." The Stalwart held vital medical supplies for Elysium. "Damn it." Anthony banged his head on the armrest. "Comms are still unreliable. I can't get a clear signal to half the fleet." Suspicion, a cold serpent, coiled in his gut. Someone had betrayed them. "We have to assume the leak is ongoing," Zara said, her voice low. "Anything we transmit could be intercepted." "Security lockdown," Anthony ordered. "No one in or out. Seal all data ports. I want a complete diagnostic of every system on every ship. Find the leak." Zara turned, her scaled face etched with concern. "Commander, a lockdown will only exacerbate the tensions. The Saurian crews will see it as a sign of distrust." "I don't have a choice, Zara," Anthony said, his voice grim. "Elysium is counting on us." Hours crawled by. The fleet limped through the void, repair crews working frantically to restore damaged systems. The lockdown cast a pall of suspicion over everything. Then, a breakthrough. "Commander," a young ensign reported, his voice tight with excitement. "We found it. Anomalous data transfer logs on the Pathfinder. Someone accessed the hyperspace navigation data just before the jump." The Pathfinder was commanded by Captain Eva Rostova, a veteran officer with an impeccable record. "Rostova," Anthony felt a cold dread settle over him. "That's impossible." "The logs don't lie, sir," the ensign insisted. "The access codes match hers." On the main view screen, Rostova's image appeared, her face pale and drawn. "Commander, I swear I didn't do it. Someone framed me. My system was hacked." Zara studied Rostova's image, her reptilian eyes narrowed. "She's telling the truth," she said quietly. "I believe her." Anthony hesitated. Rostova had served with him for years, but the evidence... "Confine Captain Rostova to quarters," he ordered, his voice heavy. "Initiate a full interrogation. I want to know everything she knows." Before the interrogation could begin, another alarm blared. "Incoming Vorlag vessels. They're heading straight for Elysium." The colony, already weakened by supply shortages, was now directly in the path of Vorlag's fleet. They had no time. "We can't let them reach Elysium," Anthony said, his voice grim. "They'll slaughter the population." Zara stepped forward, her scaled hand resting on the holographic display. We can't engage them directly. We're too damaged, too scattered, but we can use their aggression against them. What do you have in mind? Anthony asked, his gaze fixed on Zara. A diversion, she said. A small, fast strike force to hit Vorlag's flagship. Draw him away from Elysium. It's risky, but it's our only chance. Anthony studied the tactical projections, weighing the odds. It was a suicide mission, but it might just work. Prepare the Dauntless for immediate departure, he ordered. We're going to take the fight to Vorlag. As the strike force prepared to jump, a coded message flashed across Zara's private comm channel. The sender was unknown. She frowned, her reptilian brow furrowed in thought. She decrypted the message. It was short, cryptic. Rostova is a pawn. The game is deeper than you know. Trust no one. The message included a string of encrypted data hinting at a conspiracy involving both human and Saurian factions. Zara hesitated. Whom could she trust? Was this a trap or a lifeline? The stakes had just been raised. She slipped the data chip into her pocket. Anthony needed her on the Dauntless, but she couldn't ignore this. Commander, she said, her voice carefully neutral. I need to review the fleet's defensive protocols before we depart. It will only take a few minutes. Anthony nodded, preoccupied with the upcoming battle. Make it quick, Zara. We don't have time to waste. Zara turned and walked away, her mind racing. She was about to embark on a dangerous side mission, one that could expose a conspiracy that threatened everything they were fighting for. And she was completely alone. Zara, while ostensibly preparing the counterattack, focused her senses. Her three-fingered hand rested lightly on the console, but her mind was miles away, sifting through the digital noise. Unlike human hearing, limited to audible frequencies, Zara's species perceived the subtle electromagnetic whispers that permeated the ship. She wasn't just listening for the coded message. She was feeling its echo, tracing its origin like a phantom scent. The trail, faint as it was, tugged her toward a restricted area on Deck 7, near the human ship's engineering core. The area was marked with harsh red warnings in both human and Saurian script, a place where only authorized personnel were permitted. The air here vibrated with the hum of powerful machinery, a cacophony that would overwhelm human senses, but to Zara, it was a backdrop, a canvas on which the faint signal painted its path. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Anthony Young wrestled with holographic projections of the colony's dwindling defenses. Red icons blinked ominously, each representing a breach in the perimeter. Report, he barked, his voice tight with controlled urgency. How long before Vorlag's forces reach the civilian sector? Lieutenant Davies, his face grim, responded, estimates are less than an hour, Commander. We're stretched too thin. Reinforcements are pinned down at the south gate. Anthony rubbed his temples, the weight of command pressing down on him. Limited resources, dwindling time, and the lives of thousands hanging in the balance. Divert Alpha Team to the civilian sector. Establish a defensive line. We need to buy them time to evacuate. Back on Deck 7, Zara's investigation had yielded a lead. A human officer, seemingly in charge of the engineering core, had been on duty during the time the coded message was transmitted. The interrogation, conducted by a seasoned human investigator, was yielding little. The officer, sweating under the harsh lights, insisted he knew nothing. We reviewed the logs, Officer Reynolds, the investigator pressed, his voice calm but firm. You were the only one on duty in this sector during the transmission window. Reynolds stammered, I was running diagnostics, sir. Routine maintenance. I didn't see anything unusual. Zara, observing from behind a one-way mirror, noticed a flicker of hesitation in Reynolds' eyes, a subtle tightening of his jaw. It wasn't a confession, but it was a crack in his facade. She sensed a deeper current, a hidden allegiance. The man was hiding something. Suddenly, the ship lurched violently. Alarms blared, their piercing wails echoing through the corridors. Report. Anthony's voice crackled over the comms. We're under heavy attack, Commander, Davies shouted back. Vorlag's forces have breached the outer perimeter. They're pouring through the gaps. Chaos erupted on the colony's surface. Explosions rocked the landscape, sending plumes of smoke and debris into the sky. Civilian transports were targeted, their burning wreckage littering the evacuation routes. Screams echoed through the comms channels, a horrifying symphony of destruction. Civilian casualties mounted with terrifying speed. Anthony, his face etched with unwavering dedication, barked orders: all units, fall back to the secondary defensive line. Protect the evacuation corridors at all costs. Just then, a message flashed across his command console. Commander Young, report to Sector 9 immediately. Unauthorized activity detected. It was Zara. He clenched his fist, his frustration boiling over. What in the hell is she doing? He knew he needed every available soldier, every resource to hold the line. He couldn't afford distractions. He found Zara in a dimly lit corridor, her expression unreadable. What's the meaning of this, Zara? He demanded, his voice low and dangerous. We're under attack. I need you on the front lines. Zara met his gaze, her scaled face impassive. I detected a coded message, Commander. I traced it to this ship. I believe there is a traitor in our midst. Anthony stared at her, his heart pounding. A traitor now? This is insane, Zara. We have a planetary invasion underway. We don't have time for conspiracy theories. It is not a theory, Zara insisted, her voice firm. I have evidence. The message originated from within our own ranks. It is guiding Vorlag's forces. Their trust, so carefully cultivated, hung precariously in the balance. Anthony hesitated, torn between his duty to defend the colony and his growing belief in Zara's abilities. He saw the conviction in her eyes, the unwavering certainty that she was right. Against his better judgment, he made a decision. All right, he conceded, his voice tight. I'll give you a squad, investigate, but if this turns out to be a wild goose chase. Zara nodded, her crests flicking in acknowledgement. It will not. Zara, aided by the squad Anthony reluctantly provided, focused on the restricted area. She found it, cleverly concealed within a maintenance panel, a sophisticated communication device, far beyond anything the average insurgent would possess. It was a miniature transmitter, capable of bypassing all standard security protocols. The signal led them to one of the Saurian refugee camps on the edge of the colony. These camps were established to house Saurians displaced by Vorlag's aggression, a fragile alliance that Anthony had championed. The revelation that the mole was operating from within this community added another layer of complexity to the already fraught situation. On the front lines, the situation was deteriorating rapidly. Vorlag's forces, emboldened by their initial success, were pushing deeper into the colony. Human and Saurian soldiers fought side by side, but they were outnumbered and outgunned. The streets ran red with blood. Anthony, coordinating the defense from a makeshift command post, knew that the end was near. Prepare for a final stand, he ordered, his voice grim. We will defend these civilians to the last man. Zara, following the signal's source, entered the heart of the refugee camp. The transmitter led her to a humble dwelling where an elderly Saurian sat in quiet contemplation. He was a respected elder, revered by the refugees for his wisdom and guidance. Elder Thuron, Zara said, her voice barely a whisper. I know about the transmitter. The elder looked up, his scaled face betraying no emotion. So you have discovered my secret. Why? Zara asked, her heart heavy. Why are you helping Vorlag? I am not helping Vorlag, the elder replied, his voice raspy with age. I am ensuring the survival of my people. This alliance with the humans is a fool's errand. They will betray us as they have betrayed countless others. I am merely hastening the inevitable. That is not true, Zara protested. Anthony Young is a good man. He wants peace. Peace is a lie, the elder scoffed. There is only power, and the humans will never share it with us. I am working to destabilize the alliance, to create an opportunity for a new Saurian empire to rise. Zara was torn. She understood the elder's fears, the deep-seated distrust that had been ingrained in her people for generations. But she also knew Anthony, his unwavering commitment to justice, his genuine desire for a better future. The elder rose to his feet, his eyes burning with fanaticism. "Join me, Zara," he urged, extending a three-fingered hand. "Together we can build a new world, a world where Saurians rule supreme. You will be at my side, a queen among your people." Zara hesitated, the weight of her past, her loyalties, and her future pressing down on her. But then she thought of Anthony, of his unwavering faith in her, of the hope he represented. "No," she said, her voice firm. "I will not betray him. I will not betray my friends." The elder's face contorted with rage. "Then you are a fool, Zara, a traitor to your own kind." He reached into his robes and produced a small device. "If you will not join me, then you will die with them." He activated the device. A series of red lights blinked ominously. These explosives are strategically placed throughout the colony. In moments, this entire place will be reduced to ashes, and the humans will blame Vorlag, further fueling the war. My people will be safe. Zara lunged forward, but it was too late. The elder pressed a button. A timer appeared on the device, counting down from 5 minutes. Zara knew she had to act fast. She had to disarm the explosives before it was too late. She was a general, not a demolition expert. She glanced at the control panel. There was no time for analysis. She had to trust her instincts. The elder, surrounded by his loyal followers, watched her with a triumphant sneer. "You cannot stop me, Zara. My people will be free." Zara ignored him. She focused on the device, her mind racing. She had 5 minutes to save the colony. 5 minutes to prove that the human-Saurian alliance was worth fighting for. 5 minutes to choose her own destiny. She activated her comm. "Anthony, the elder, is behind it all. He has a fail-safe device. Explosives throughout the colony. I'm going after them." Then she was off, racing against time, facing a gauntlet of Vorlag's troops and the elder's fanatical followers, her heart pounding in her chest. The first wire was hair-thin, almost invisible against the matte black casing. Zara's three-fingered hand, augmented with the haptic feedback glove, trembled slightly as she inserted the micro-cutter. A high-pitched whine filled the small chamber as the energy field surrounding the explosive pulsed erratically. Her scales prickled with a cold sweat. Outside, the thunder of battle echoed through the colony. Laser fire sizzled, and the guttural roars of Vorlag Saurians mingled with the shouts of human soldiers. "Hold the line." Anthony's voice boomed over the comms, strained but firm. "They will not break through, for Earth, for Sauria." On the disarming panel, a holographic image of the Saurian elder Vorlag flickered to life. His reptilian eyes, cold and devoid of empathy, bored into Zara. "You cannot stop what is coming, slave. This colony, your pathetic alliance with these humans, it will all burn, and you, Zara, will be remembered as the one who failed to save them." His image dissolved into static. Zara ignored him, focusing on the intricate symbols etched into the explosive's control panel. They were not written in the common trade language, but in the ancient dialect of her ancestors, a language steeped in history, honor, and betrayal. Each glyph was a key, a memory, a piece of her stolen past. Fall back to Sector 7. Anthony's voice crackled again, imbued with urgency. "We can't hold them here." Through the comms, Zara heard the desperate cries of soldiers, the agonizing screams of the wounded. A low rumble shook the chamber as a section of the outer wall collapsed. One of the human technicians, a young woman with wide, terrified eyes, grabbed Zara's arm. "We have to go. It's too late." Zara shook her head, her gaze fixed on the panel. "Not yet." The retreat was a bloodbath. Humans and Saurians fought side by side, covering each other's backs as they fell back through the narrow corridors. Sergeant Miller, a grizzled veteran with a cybernetic arm, detonated a grenade at a choke point, buying precious seconds for his comrades. A young Saurian medic, barely out of training, threw herself in front of a laser blast to protect a wounded human engineer. Zara's fingers flew across the panel, deciphering the complex code. She had managed to unlock the first layer, disabling the proximity sensors, but the core detonation sequence remained locked behind an even more formidable barrier, a missing component. Vorlag's laughter echoed in her mind. Did you really think it would be this easy, Zara? This final failsafe is keyed to my own biosignature. Only I can disarm it. The colony's central district was now a war zone. Buildings crumbled under the relentless assault, and the air was thick with smoke and the stench of burning flesh. Anthony, his face grim but resolute, led the defense from behind a barricade of overturned vehicles. He moved with a speed and precision that belied his age, his laser rifle spitting death at the advancing Saurians. "Hold your ground," he roared, his voice hoarse. "For every one of us they kill, we'll take 10 of them with us." Zara knew what she had to do. The biosignature lock was not merely a digital code. It was a complex sequence of proteins and enzymes, a unique expression of Vorlag's DNA. But Saurians possessed a unique ability, limited genetic mimicry. With enough focus, enough will, she could become him, at least for a moment. Closing her eyes, Zara reached deep within herself, dredging up the memories of her captivity, the pain, the humiliation, the burning desire for revenge. She visualized Vorlag's face, his voice, his very essence. Her scales shimmered, her body convulsed as she forced her DNA to rewrite itself. The pain was excruciating, a searing fire that ripped through her every cell. Her vision blurred and she felt her consciousness slipping away. A sudden explosion rocked the chamber, throwing her against the wall. Through the smoke, she saw Anthony lying on the ground, a gaping wound in his side. He was still alive, but barely. With a surge of adrenaline, Zara pushed herself to her feet. The biosignature was complete, imprinted on her very being. Stumbling towards the main control panel, she prepared to input the final code. Suddenly, the panel sparked, throwing off blue arcs of electricity as Vorlag attempted to remotely trigger the explosives. A countdown timer flashed on the screen, 00:05:00. Zara's fingers danced across the keys, fighting against the interference, desperately trying to override the Elder's signal. Just as she was about to hit the final activation rune, a figure stepped out of the shadows behind her. "Impressive, Zara," a voice said, smooth and cold. "I always knew you were resourceful." Zara whirled around, her eyes widening in disbelief. Standing before her was Colonel Richards, a high-ranking human officer, a man she had trusted, a man who had always seemed to be her ally. "You," she whispered, her voice trembling. Richard smiled, a cruel, predatory smile. "You see, Zara, your family, they were becoming a problem. Too much influence, too much power. They needed to be removed. And you were simply collateral damage." He raised a disruptor pistol, aiming it at her head. "Vorlag promised me a substantial reward for ensuring this colony's destruction. A clean slate, a new beginning." Zara's world tilted on its axis. The sabotage, the betrayal, the enslavement. It all led back to this, to him. Richards lunged, knocking her away from the control panel. The pistol clattered to the floor as they grappled for control. The countdown timer ticked down, 00:04:32. Zara fought with a ferocity born of desperation, her three-fingered hands clawing at Richard's face. He was stronger, heavier, but she was fueled by a rage that transcended physical limitations. The screen faded to black as the explosives ticked toward zero. Zara, fueled by adrenaline and a cold, reptilian rage, snapped the human officer's arm with a sickening crack. He gasped, but she didn't give him time to scream, slamming his head against the control panel until his eyes glazed over. The struggle had cost her precious seconds, the digital timer on the explosive now flashing a menacing red. The colony or Anthony? The choice ripped through her like a plasma blade. Anthony, bleeding out, needed her. But if the colony went up, there would be no one left to save. Her decision hardened her scales. She had to save the colony first. Ignoring the limp form of the officer, Zara forced herself to focus on the control panel. Her three-fingered hand flew across the interface, inputting the replicated biosignature, then the remaining sequence of the deactivation code. Each tap echoed in the tense silence. A harsh, grating tone filled the room. Access DENIED. Red lights pulsed angrily. The system rejected the code, a secondary layer of security, a fail-safe. Zara's mind raced, sifting through the schematics she had memorized, the disarming sequence. It wasn't just a code. It required a secondary input, based on real-time environmental conditions within the colony. Air pressure, temperature, atmospheric composition. A complex equation designed to prevent exactly this kind of override. She glanced at the timer. Seconds remained. Drawing upon her deep understanding of the colony's environmental systems, Zara rapidly calculated the necessary parameters. Her eyes darted across the sensor readings displayed on a nearby monitor, feeding the data into the equation in her head. Finally, she input the solution. The grating tone ceased. The red lights turned green. A calm, synthesized voice announced, "Explosives disarmed. System integrity restored." Zara didn't waste a breath. She sprinted from the control room, her scaled feet pounding against the metal floor. She found Anthony surrounded by a grim tableau, a human medic frantically working to staunch the flow of blood from his chest, and a Saurian warrior, his face etched with concern. The medic looked up, his face pale. "Commander Young needs immediate advanced medical attention," he said, his voice tight with urgency. "We can't do anything more for him here." The Saurian warrior stepped forward. "Vorlag's forces have established a blockade," he rumbled, his voice heavy with dread. "No ships can leave the planet." Zara's mind reeled. A blockade. Anthony dying, she had to get him off-world. "Prepare a stealth ship," she commanded, her voice sharp and decisive. "We're breaking that blockade." Before she could leave, Zara turned back to the deactivated human officer and dragged him to a holding cell. There, she initiated an interrogation. "Why?" she hissed, her face inches from his. The officer spat blood at her. You Xeno's filth. Humanity will never be safe as long as you exist." His eyes burned with hatred. "We were meant to inherit the stars, not share them with your kind." He revealed that his actions were part of a larger conspiracy, involving high-ranking members of the human military who feared the growing alliance between humans and Saurians. They saw Zara as a symbol of that alliance, and Anthony as a fool blinded by sentimentality. Zara, suppressing her fury, relayed the information to a trusted group of human and Saurian officers. Faces hardened with drive. They pledged to expose the conspiracy, but only after dealing with Vorlag. Within the hour, Zara, accompanied by a small team of elite human and Saurian soldiers, boarded a heavily modified stealth corvette. The Shadowclaw slipped silently from the colony's atmosphere, its cloaking device rendering it virtually invisible to enemy sensors. As they approached the blockade, a warning klaxon blared. "Unidentified vessel detected," a voice crackled over the comms. "Bearing 270 closing fast." Zara's scales prickled with unease. "That's not one of Vorlag's ships," she said, her eyes narrowed. "That's Saurian, a warship, but it's using a modified cloaking system, one I haven't seen before." Suddenly, a transmission pierced through the static. The voice was familiar, chillingly so. "Zara, this is Commander Raelek," the voice said, tinged with a coldness that cut deeper than any blade. "Stand down and prepare to be boarded. Surrender now, or I will be forced to destroy the colony from orbit." Zara froze. Raelek had died years ago during the purge. She stared at the comm screen, her heart pounding in her chest. It couldn't be. "Zara," the voice repeated, the threat unmistakable. "I will not ask again. Surrender or face the consequences." Zara activated the comm system, her scaled fingers dancing across the console. "Reichel, this is Zara. Stand down, we need to talk." A moment of static, then Reichel's voice, infused with a coldness she hadn't heard since childhood. "Zara, I heard whispers, rumors. I hoped they were false, that you hadn't degraded yourself." "Degraded? Reichel, I'm trying to prevent a war. These humans, they aren't our enemy. They're offering us a chance at peace." Zara's voice was tight, pleading. She could picture Reichel's face, the strong lines softened by youthful idealism, now hardened by what? Peace. "Zara, they've poisoned your mind, can't you see? They're manipulating you, using you as a tool to dismantle everything we stand for. Our heritage, our strength, our destiny. You've been brainwashed." Reichel's voice rose, cracking with fervor. "You were always so impressionable." "That's not true, Reichel. I've seen what you haven't. I've seen the potential for cooperation, for mutual benefit. This isn't about dominance, it's about survival." "Survival? They'll bleed us dry and take what's left. Don't be a fool, Zara. I know who you are, what you were meant for. I'm doing this for you, for us, for the Saurian people." Reichel's voice dripped with conviction. "I'm working with officers, high-ranking officers, who understand the threat humanity poses. They're ready to do what's necessary to protect our way of life." Zara felt a chill crawl down her spine despite the warmth of the command center. "Reichel, you've chosen your side, and it's not with me." The weight of that realization settled heavy in her chest. Negotiation was impossible. She cut the connection. "Helm, prepare for immediate departure. Engineering, I need that salvaged cloaking device from the Hope's Fall colony online now." "Commander, that device is barely functional. It's old tech, and it was heavily damaged during the attack," a tech officer protested. "I know, but it's our only chance to slip past Reichel's blockade. We'll use it to get close enough to transmit a distress signal." Zara tapped a claw against her thigh, thinking, "It'll require constant manual adjustments to the cloaking field. One wrong move and we're exposed." A human pilot, Lieutenant Phillips, stepped forward. "Commander, I've flown through asteroid fields with my eyes closed. I can handle a finicky cloaking device. I volunteer." Zara studied the young pilot's face, determined, resolute. Human bravery, a strange and often baffling quality. "Thank you, Lieutenant. Prepare a stealth-modified shuttle. Minimal crew. We leave within the hour." The shuttle was cramped, barely larger than an escape pod. Zara, Phillips, and two Saurian security officers strapped themselves into their acceleration couches. The air hummed with tension as Phillips initiated the launch sequence. "Activating cloaking device," Phillips announced, his voice tight. A low whine filled the shuttle as the device sputtered to life. Red lights flickered erratically across the control panel. "The field's unstable. I'll need to constantly adjust the frequency to compensate." As they approached Reichel's warship, alarms blared briefly on the shuttle. "Proximity alert," one of the security officers shouted. "They're scanning the area." "Hold steady," Zara commanded, her heart pounding against her scales. "Their sensors are sweeping our sector," Phillips said, his fingers flying across the console. "The cloaking field's fluctuating. I'm losing it." Outside, the monstrous silhouette of Reichel's warship loomed, a dark predator in the void. Then, as suddenly as they began, the alarm ceased. "We're clear." "For now," Phillips said, wiping sweat from his brow. "Divert power to the cloaking device," Zara ordered. "We're not out of the woods yet." Phillips expertly maneuvered the shuttle through a dense field of debris, shattered remnants of the Hope's Fall colony. Jagged metal fragments tumbled past the viewport, close enough to touch. "Using the wreckage as cover," Phillips reported, his voice calm despite the tension. "Reducing our sensor profile." A sudden jolt rocked the shuttle. Alarms screamed. "Hull breach, Section 4, loss of atmosphere, seal off Section 4. Zara barked, her voice echoing in the confined space. "Sacrifice the equipment, preserve the shuttle's integrity." The airlock hissed shut, sealing off the damaged section. The shuttle shuddered but held. Minutes stretched into an eternity as they crept past the blockade. Finally, the open expanse of space lay before them. "Transmitting distress signal," Zara announced, her voice filled with a mixture of relief and apprehension. As if in response, the comm system crackled to life. "This is Reichel. Zara, you can't escape your destiny. I'm coming for you." Alarms blared again, louder this time. Warship pursuing, they're locking on. "Hold on tight," Phillips yelled, throwing the shuttle into a series of evasive maneuvers. Red energy bolts slammed into the shuttle, shaking it violently. Shields failing, hull integrity critical. Phillips shouted over the alarms. Heading for the human cruiser, the Dauntless. More energy blasts tore through the shuttle's hull. Sparks flew. The lights flickered and died, plunging the interior into near darkness. "We're almost there." Phillips strained, his voice tight with effort. "Just a little further." A final jolt as the shuttle docked with the Dauntless. The hatch hissed open, and medical personnel rushed in, pulling Zara and her team from the wreckage. As they were being carried toward the medical bay, Zara heard the roar of engines and the thunder of cannons. Through the viewport, she saw the Dauntless engaging Reichel's warship in a fierce battle. Energy blasts illuminated the void, painting a deadly ballet of destruction. A medic leaned over her, injecting her with a stimulant. "You're safe now, Commander." Zara struggled to focus. "Who's in command of the Dauntless?" "Admiral Jennings," the medic replied. Zara's blood ran cold. Admiral Jennings, a known sympathizer to the anti-alien conspiracy. Had they escaped one trap only to fall into another? The cruiser's automated medical systems whirred to life, dousing Zara's scorched scales in a cool, antiseptic mist. A medical drone flitted around her, patching burns with a quick hardening polymer. Lieutenant Phillips, his face pale, sat propped against a wall, his prosthetic arm sparking intermittently. The medical bay was small, cramped, and far too efficient to be comforting. Meanwhile, in a Spartan briefing room, Anthony stood before Admiral Jennings. The Admiral, a stern-faced man with eyes that seemed to bore into your soul, listened intently. "So, Commander," Jennings began, his voice a low rumble, "you're telling me that a Saurian warship ambushed a diplomatic convoy and that a former slave, now your general, identified the attacker as Reichel, a rogue element." "That's correct, sir," Anthony replied, his voice steady. "And you believe this Reichel is acting alone?" Jennings pressed, his gaze unwavering. "I believe he's part of something larger, sir." Zara recognized his tactics. She said it was more than just a rogue attack, and Phillips heard them talking about a larger conspiracy. Jennings steepled his fingers. "Conspiracy. Ambitious claim, Commander, especially coming from a former slave." Back in the medical bay, a medical drone extended a delicate manipulator arm, probing Lieutenant Phillips's prosthetic. "Commander," the drone chirped in a monotone, "I'm detecting an anomaly within the lieutenant's prosthetic, a foreign object." Phillips winced as the drone extracted a small, metallic chip from his arm. "What is that?" he asked, his voice strained. "Unknown, Lieutenant," the drone replied. "Analyzing." Minutes later, Anthony and Zara huddled over a holographic display in a secure compartment. The data chip, once decrypted, revealed a cascade of encrypted communications, financial transactions, and strategic plans. "It's worse than we thought," Zara hissed, her three-fingered hand hovering over a schematic of a Saurian warship. "Reichel isn't just a rogue. He's being funded and directed by high-ranking officers within the Saurian military. And, look at this," Anthony pointed to a series of encrypted messages. "These are coordinates, strategic locations along the border. Someone is planning a full-scale destabilization campaign." A knock at the door interrupted them. Commander Ellis, a human officer with a weary expression, entered. "Commander Young, Admiral Jennings has been issuing some unusual orders. He's diverting resources away from the pursuit of Reichel, sending them to the Gamma-7 sector." "Gamma-7," Anthony frowned. "That's a low-priority sector." "Why?" "That's not all, sir," Ellis continued, his voice low. "I've intercepted some encrypted communications from the Admiral's private channel. They're heavily coded, but they seem to be coordinating with someone." Zara's scaled brow furrowed. "Jennings is leading us into a trap. Reichel is a distraction. Anthony swore under his breath. Gamma 7. That's where the Sons of Purity are based. An anti-human extremist group. Admiral Jennings's voice boomed over the intercom. Attention all hands, this is the Admiral speaking. We are altering course. New destination, Gamma 7 sector. Prepare for immediate engagement. Sir, with all due respect, Anthony's voice crackled over the comms, pursuing Reichel is the priority. Gamma 7 can wait. That's an order, Commander, Jennings snapped. Comply immediately. On the bridge, the tactical officer's voice cut through the tension. Sir, Reichel's warship is closing in. They're within firing range. Zara turned to Anthony, her eyes blazing. We cannot engage both Reichel and the extremists. We must choose. We don't have a choice, Anthony said grimly. Jennings is forcing our hand. Zara tapped a series of commands into a console. Then we use their presence to our advantage. The Sons of Purity hate humans. Let's give them a reason to attack us. Anthony looked at her, a spark of understanding in his eyes. You're thinking of provoking them, making Jennings show his hand. He keyed his comm. This is Commander Young to all channels. We are approaching the Gamma 7 sector. Be advised, we are detecting a significant energy signature emanating from the surface. It appears to be an extremist base, shields to maximum. He paused, then added almost as an afterthought, they don't seem to like us much. As if on cue, the cruiser shuddered violently. Red alerts flashed across the bridge. We're under attack, the tactical officer shouted. Energy weapons fire from the surface. Shields are down to 50%. Jennings's voice, filled with false alarm, came over the intercom. Return fire, target their energy source. But Zara noticed something. The cruiser's targeting systems were deliberately inaccurate, the energy blasts narrowly missing the extremist base's critical systems. Zara strode onto the bridge, her scales gleaming under the red emergency lights. Admiral, she said, her voice cold and hard, you are deliberately sabotaging this engagement. You are in league with Reichel and the Saurian conspirators. Jennings turned, his face a mask of indignation. How dare you accuse me? Enough. Zara cut him off. Your actions speak louder than words. You are leading us into a trap. Suddenly, the cruiser rocked again. The tactical officer yelled, Sir, Reichel's warship has arrived. They're firing on us. The cruiser was caught in a crossfire, shields failing, the hull groaning under the strain. Anthony grabbed Zara's arm. It's time to go. We're not going to win this fight. He led her to a damaged escape pod. It's a long shot, but it's our only chance. As they climbed into the cramped pod, Jennings's voice, now stripped of all pretense, boomed over the comms. Target that escape pod. Do not let them escape. The escape pod launched, hurtling into the void as laser fire from the cruiser streaked past, confirming Jennings's betrayal and plunging them into the cold, unforgiving depths of space. The escape pod bucked violently, alarms blaring like banshees in the cramped space. Sparks showered from a severed conduit near Zara's head, the acrid smell of ozone stinging her nostrils. Outside, the cruiser's weapons fire hammered against their fragile shell. Life support failing. Anthony shouted over the din, wrestling with the controls. We're losing atmosphere. Zara, her scaled fingers flying across a damaged console, snarled in frustration. I can reroute power from the auxiliary systems, but it will kill navigation and comms. Do it, Anthony snapped. I'll fly us blind before we suffocate. Zara didn't hesitate. With a final surge of energy, the life support flickered back to life, the alarms momentarily silenced. But the main viewport went dark and the holographic display flickered and died. We're on our own, Anthony said grimly, his fingers tightening as he gripped the manual controls. He glanced at a hastily downloaded star chart. There's an uncharted moon nearby. Our only chance is to put down there. The moon loomed closer, a gray, pockmarked sphere against the black void. As they entered the atmosphere, the pod shuddered violently, the heat shields groaning under the strain. The surface rushed up to meet them, a desolate, rocky landscape bathed in the harsh glare of a distant sun. Jagged peaks cast long, black shadows across the plains. The air was thin and frigid, barely registering on the pod's failing sensors. A red blip appeared on the damaged proximity sensor. "Reichel's ship," Zara hissed. "He's still on our tail." The crash landing was brutal. The pod slammed into the surface, the impact throwing Zara against the console. When she regained her senses, the emergency lights flickered weakly, illuminating a scene of twisted metal and shattered displays. "Anthony!" she cried, scrambling towards the pilot's seat. He groaned, pushing himself up. "I'm alive," he rasped, "but this thing is scrap. The emergency beacon is fried." Zara examined the ruined transmitter. "Beyond repair, we're cut off." They stumbled out of the wreckage, the thin, cold air biting at their lungs. In the distance, they spotted a structure, a small, abandoned mining outpost clinging to the side of a rocky ridge. "Shelter," Anthony said, pointing towards it. "And maybe, just maybe, something we can use." The outpost was little more than a collection of prefabricated modules, their surfaces scarred by meteor strikes and long years of neglect. Inside, they found empty storage containers, rusted tools, and a single, flickering emergency lamp. "Not much here," Anthony said, his voice echoing in the empty space. "No food, no water, no working equipment." Zara ran her hand along a dusty console, her brow furrowed in concentration. "There's a power signature nearby," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "A geothermal vent deep within the caves beneath this ridge." "Power." Anthony's eyes lit up. "Enough to get the comms array working." "Potentially," Zara replied. "But the caves?" "The readings are unusual." As they ventured into the darkness, the temperature plummeted. The air grew thick with the smell of sulfur and something else. Something ancient and alien. The beam of Anthony's flashlight danced across the cavern walls, revealing strange, bioluminescent fungi and grotesque rock formations. Suddenly, a guttural growl echoed through the cavern. Two glowing eyes appeared in the darkness, followed by the snarling face of a creature unlike anything they had ever seen. It was vaguely reptilian but twisted and deformed, its scales covered in bony protrusions, its limbs ending in razor-sharp claws. More creatures emerged from the shadows, their eyes burning with predatory hunger. "Mutated," Zara hissed, drawing her sidearm. "Adapted to the moon's environment." The creatures lunged. Anthony fired, the energy blasts momentarily stunning the beasts. Zara moved with a speed that belied her size, her claws slashing through the air. They fought back to back, their movements synchronized, their trust in each other absolute. Anthony used the narrow passages to his advantage, creating choke points and funneling the creatures into kill zones. Zara, with her superior senses, detected their movements in the darkness, anticipating their attacks. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the last of the creatures fell, their bodies twitching in the dust. "That was unpleasant," Anthony said, catching his breath. "They were guarding something," Zara replied, her eyes fixed on a narrow passage leading deeper into the cavern. "The geothermal vent is that way." They reached the vent, a fissure in the rock spewing forth superheated steam. Working quickly, they scavenged parts from the outpost and the escape pod, rigging up a makeshift generator to convert the thermal energy into electricity. The communication array flickered to life, but the signal was weak and unstable. "Almost there," Anthony said, his fingers flying across the console. "Just need to boost the signal." A deafening roar shook the cavern. Reichel's warship landed nearby, its ramp slamming down onto the rocky surface. Saurian soldiers poured out, their weapons trained on the cave entrance. "He's found us," Zara said grimly. "And he's not just here to kill us," Anthony added, his eyes narrowed in suspicion. "He's looking for something else." They retreated deeper into the cave system, their footsteps echoing in the darkness. They discovered a hidden chamber, its entrance concealed behind a false wall. Inside, the air hummed with latent energy. Ancient Saurian symbols adorned the walls, and in the center of the chamber stood a massive, crystalline structure. "What is this place?" Anthony whispered. A holographic projector flickered to life, revealing the image of an ancient Saurian scientist. His voice, distorted by time, filled the chamber. "This is Project Nullification," the scientist said. "A weapon capable of disrupting planetary defense shields. A secret the Saurian government has suppressed for millennia." Jennings' plan wasn't just betrayal. He wanted the weapon to use the anti-human group to destabilize the government further and cause a civil war. Suddenly, Reichel and his soldiers burst into the chamber, their weapons raised. "Hand over the weapon, Zara," Reichel snarled, his eyes burning with hatred. "Or die." Zara glanced at Anthony, her mind racing. She knew the weapon was too dangerous to fall into Reichel's hands, but activating it could have catastrophic consequences. "I have a better idea," she said, her voice cold and resolute. With a swift movement, she activated the weapon. A blinding flash of energy filled the chamber. The crystalline structure pulsed with power, emitting a high-pitched whine that resonated deep within their bones. The lights flickered and died. The ground began to tremble. Reichel screamed in rage as the energy pulse washed over him, disabling his warship and sending his soldiers sprawling. The cavern walls groaned under the strain. "This place is collapsing," Anthony shouted, grabbing Zara's hand. They scrambled for the exit, but a section of the roof caved in, separating them from Reichel and his soldiers. As the chamber collapsed around them, Zara and Anthony were plunged into darkness, their fate uncertain, the future of the weapon hanging in the balance. The chamber groaned, another section of the ancient structure succumbing to the weapon's aftershock. Dust and debris rained down as Zara, wincing from a gash on her scaled arm, helped Anthony to his feet. "This way," she rasped, her voice hoarse. "I recognize the structural patterns. There's a service tunnel that might still be intact." Her knowledge of Saurian architecture, once a point of pride, now became their lifeline. They moved quickly, the tunnel narrow and claustrophobic. They found Reichel, or what was left of him. A massive support beam had crushed him. "One less threat," Anthony said grimly, "but Jennings is still out there, and we still don't know what his overall plans are." Zara nodded. "We need to get off this ship, disable the weapon, and bring Jennings to justice." Reaching the main corridor, they found it eerily silent. The weapon's energy pulse had knocked out all power, plunging the ship into darkness. Emergency lights flickered weakly, casting long, distorted shadows. But the ship itself was intact, a potential treasure trove of evidence against Jennings. "The escape pods," Anthony said, "but the comms will be down." "Not necessarily," Zara replied, her three-fingered hand already working on a damaged control panel salvaged from the ancient technology. "The weapon's energy signature is similar to some of our long-range communication arrays. If we can amplify the pod signal, focus it." Hours blurred into a frantic dance of sparks, muttered curses, and desperate innovation. Using their combined engineering skills, they managed to jury-rig a makeshift amplifier, drawing power from the pod's emergency cells. "It's a long shot," Anthony said, as Zara initiated the sequence, "but it's all we've got." A faint, almost imperceptible hum filled the cramped space. Then a flicker on the pod's ancient display. A connection. The signal was weak, barely registering, but it was there. The distress call was sent. Against adversity, it was answered. A joint human-Saurian patrol ship, a symbol of the very alliance Zara and Anthony had championed, picked up the faint signal. Their arrival was not just rescue, but validation. Back on the fleet flagship, the evidence recovered from Jennings' ship was irrefutable. The weapon, Jennings' communications, his financial transactions all pointed to a conspiracy that threatened to shatter the fragile peace. Jennings and his anti-human conspirators were rounded up. The arrests sent shockwaves through both human and Saurian societies. The movement's leaders, exposed and disgraced, were quickly stripped of their power. a potential civil war averted. The political crisis, however, was just the beginning. Accusations flew, old wounds reopened, and distrust simmered beneath the surface. It was Zara who stepped forward, using her intimate knowledge of Saurian politics and her growing understanding of human culture to navigate the treacherous waters. She brokered compromises, negotiated treaties, and reminded everyone of the common enemy they had faced and overcome. Anthony, standing firmly by her side, used his influence to sway human leaders, lending his credibility and unwavering support to Zara's efforts. "Trust her judgment," he urged the human council. "She sees what we cannot. She understands what we refuse to acknowledge. She is the leader we need." The Saurian government, witnessing Zara's pivotal role in averting disaster, could no longer ignore her. Her rank was reinstated, her honor restored. She was hailed as a hero, not just for her strategic brilliance, but for her unwavering commitment to peace. Then came the announcement that resonated throughout the galaxy. Zara was appointed as a general in the joint human-Saurian military alliance. It was a symbolic act, a powerful statement that the two species were not just allies but united in purpose. At the ceremony, Zara stood tall, her scaled armor gleaming in the light. Anthony stood beside her, his hand resting on her arm. He looked at her with so much love and admiration. "We have come a long way," she began, her voice clear and strong. "We have faced prejudice, betrayal, and the threat of annihilation, but we have also found strength in each other and in our shared commitment to a better future." Anthony stepped forward, taking Zara's hand. "Our love," he said, his voice resonating with sincerity, "is not just a personal matter. It is a symbol of what is possible when we embrace understanding, when we reject fear, and when we choose to see the best in each other." Their words, their actions, their very presence inspired hope and renewed commitment. The galaxy watched as two species, once on the brink of war, now stood together, united by a common vision. The ancient technology, now under joint human-Saurian study, yielded incredible insights into science, engineering, and the very fabric of the universe. The collaboration fostered a renewed respect for each other's strengths and a deeper understanding of their differences. Years later, Zara and Anthony stood side by side, overlooking a thriving metropolis, a testament to their leadership, their love, and their unwavering belief in the power of unity. The city was a vibrant tapestry of human and Saurian architecture, a symphony of cultures living in harmony. Zara placed a hand on her stomach, a gentle smile gracing her lips. Anthony wrapped his arm around her, pulling her close. The final shot lingered on Zara, pregnant, representing a new future of hope, the unity of two species, and the ultimate triumph of their love.